Blanco means young, joven. That means it was just made and distilled, but it has not been aged.
Ah, okay.
So this one, for example, is Espadín Blanco. It's been distilled carefully. It's a beautiful drink. That's it.
All right, welcome to the Rum and Anton podcast. I say Itzco Calva.
Yep.
All right,
correct.
good. Welcome.
How are you, man? Welcome.
Yeah, it's good seeing you again. We sort of had to reintroduce ourselves today.
Yeah.
We have some mutual friends who put us in contact, and I can't remember if it was during COVID, but we also have mutual friends now. One of who was recently on the podcast, Fabon, who came and played for us and interviewed. So
No, Fabao.
yeah. Yeah, right. real deal. Yeah, he's helping us with some of our design issues on the guitar on our next series too, and he's a master.
Yeah, he's really good, man. He plays at Burro actually every Thursday.
Right.
Like pretty much since the beginning.
Right.
So yeah, talented guy.
Yeah, I had a half a pitcher of some beverage with him one night, and he kept playing, and I stumbled home, but that was fun. Yep. So welcome. So you're a longtime Bangkok resident at this point?
Not really a resident, still on a working visa, but
Yeah.
on the other side, not on the legal one.
Yeah,
I've been
right.
here for like 16, 17 years now.
Yeah. You know, to me, when I went to your place, I thought, and I heard Yucatan, or I heard something I could sort of identify, and we didn't talk. I thought, I wonder what gets a person from one paradise to another, you know, like from the Yucatan Peninsula, which from an American point of view is one of the great travel spots, right?
It's amazing. Actually, I am from Mexico City.
Okay, good. So you're a city boy.
Yeah, from the very beginning, someone wrote a review and they said, we specialize in Yucatan food because we have some Yucatan dishes, right? I love Cochinita and stuff like that. But since then, it seems like everyone just picked up on that story.
Sorry.
It was BK Magazine, so it just kept coming. It's all right. I will be proud to be from Yucatan, right? I just happen not to be, so just to have clarity.
So good. Now that I've insulted you already. So how do we do...
But that's not an insult. I'm super happy with both.
Yeah. We okay, Frank? How do we do the descriptions then? So when I look at the Yucatan, and it's called Peninsula, I guess that means water on three sides, but I noticed there's like Quintana Roo and then some other areas. So how do you, when you look at the map of Mexico, how do you break it down? Are there states?
Yes, of course.
Okay.
I mean, Mexico, there's a lot of ways to break any country probably, right? In this case, when we refer to Yucatan food, for example, for me, it's not so much more about the geography, but it's more about the people.
Right.
This is an area, we have a lot of tradition, original tribes, right? So, for example, around Mexico City, it will be like Aztecs, right? We don't call them Aztecs anymore.
Right.
Anyway, in Yucatan, it will be Mayans.
Right,
and
of course.
That means that their food, a lot of their traditions are completely different. And in this case, we're talking about food, right? The food in Yucatan is different to pretty much anything else in Mexico.
Right.
So that will be just a geographical, cultural, ethnical, everything distinction, right? Which make it for a super rich place. And like you say, a absolute paradise. Whoever has been there can
Okay, good. So that helps. So is Yucatan a state, or is Quintana Roo a state, or what am I mixing up here?
Yeah, one is the state, the other one is the capital. But yeah, we generally call the peninsula, it's called. Like that would not match the state. The peninsula of Yucatan will include a few other places.
Okay, right. And so Mexico City, is Mexico City in its own state or area? I know it's massive, the city itself, but so like New York is in New York. So you write the address down New York, right?
Yeah.
Bangkok is in Thailand, you write Bangkok, Thailand. Does Mexico have Mexico City have a state that it's part of?
Yeah.
Which one?
No, actually, Mexico City is
Okay,
Mexico City.
there we go.
It used to call DF. So for people my age, we always say DF.
Okay.
And they call us Chilangos. But then they start changing the name. It's okay, it's not DF anymore. DF means Federal District. And then they swap and say, okay, now it's Mexico City.
Okay.
So you have Mexico City, which is a separate entity, and then it's surrounded by Estado de Mexico, which is a larger part, which is another state. And then we have 32 of those states, right?
32.
So you have a lot of.
Okay. And let's get down to the important stuff. Does each of the 32 states have a sports team? And are the the soccer clubs or the football clubs like crazy
I'm
competitive?
Two of them, but yeah, most of them will have something. Probably they will not make it to the big leagues. Right?
There you go.
Exhibition. But there will be some that has, for example, two, like Monterrey, they have the university one and they have the one from the state.
Right.
Mexico City will have, at least a couple, the Pumas, National University of Mexico. You have America. So you will have, Cruz Azul, I think. I'm not sure it belongs to the state. But yeah, most of them will have.
Right,
football is huge in Mexico, as you know.
Okay, so 32. So we're learning something here today, and I'm embarrassed that I don't know that, and it just shows my ignorance as a good American, not paying attention down south. So grew up in Mexico City, or did you born there?
Yeah, I was born and grew up in Mexico City.
How was that? So big city, or one of the biggies, right? I mean, it
used to be the biggest in the world at
right.
that time. We used to have 24 million people. Wow. Already in the 70s, 80s, right? So that was huge for the time. It was okay, it's really different. Despite the size, it doesn't feel like an Asian city.
Yeah.
Asian cities, like if you think Bangkok, it feels so dynamic. You have people everywhere, especially if you are around here in the central areas. It's crowded, it's happening, right?
Right.
Mexico City used to feel, maybe the whole world used to feel a little bit slower in the 80s, in the 90s. But it's a different feeling. It's more like an expanded city.
Yeah.
So yeah, things feel relaxed. It was not that chaotic. It didn't have this feeling of massiveness. Of course, on the other hand, whenever you go to another place, like I come to Bangkok, it still feels very small.
Right.
It might feel busy and crowded, but it feels small, right? So it's like, so easy, so small, so comfortable, right?
So are the Mexicans who live in Mexico City much sort of more active and fast and moving because it is the big city, or do you think it's still sort of a relaxed environment today? You know what I mean? Did they adopt the attitudes of the big city folk, or? Yeah.
Again, right? It will not be to the level of some other places,
right?
Like Tokyo, for example, right? Those are completely different spaces. But yeah, I suppose everywhere, if you live in the countryside, the access that you have to things, the places that you can go, it's completely different.
Yeah.
So you have to relax and let go a little bit, right? Same as a lot of us let go a little bit when we come to Bangkok, and things are a little bit like more relaxed, right? Everything, despite being a big city, it's sabai, right? So I suppose you start changing, you start relaxing a bit. And, the countryside of Mexico, of course, will be more relaxed than the city.
Yeah.
I think that's normal.
What did you consider the countryside of Mexico if you're in Mexico City? Was it like the orange line, the end of the orange line, which was only 3 million people, or, is it, you know what I mean? Like, because your view of what could be country might be off.
Yeah, no, actually, everything that is the urban area, we consider the city, right? It doesn't matter how far you are from the center. I suppose, the reason everyone hates people from big cities is because of our arrogance in that regard, right? Yeah. So what's countryside? Anything that is not the capital.
Right.
But of course, that's inaccurate, right? I will say Mexico City will have a very specific character, but I suppose if you talk about Monterrey, Guadalajara, other big cities, it will be a bit more relaxed, but it's still not countryside at all, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So do you have the comparables? So if I'm an American, we've got sort of the New York, LA dynamic, right? Is there an LA in Mexico? Is Monterrey your LA?
Yeah, probably that will be the accurate one. People from Monterrey, they have a very unique perspective of things. Some friend was telling me recently there has been a movement for a while that they want to make Monterrey independent.
Oh, God.
It's a big industrial area. It's close to the States. These guys feel they are different from us, right? Okay. So I suppose they have that dynamic.
All right.
If you're from Mexico City or, the rest of Mexico, we really don't make that difference. I think it's completely ridiculous. But for some reason, every area of the world that they have people, the areas that are more industrialized and productive, they suddenly feel, we deserve to be separate. We deserve to be independent, right? So
I assume we have a similar sort of vibe in Texas, right? It's like free Texas.
Perhaps. Some areas of Spain or some areas of other countries is the same. It's like, we pay the most taxes. We do the most of blast. So why are we sharing? Yeah, we have all these strange conceptions nowadays, right? Of what it means to be part of a country or the contribution. So
federalism states, How about then, is the Yucatan like an island paradise and a relative island paradise already? Is that, that's really tropical. That's, is it?
Well, I have nothing from Yucatan but amazing memories. Everything is just gorgeous in there. Historically, it has also been always very interesting. I remember going to a museum and, I was reading a lot about the story. I was actually in Yucatan. And they were mentioning that every certain years when the Spanish people, during the time of the conquest when we were under the Spaniards, every time that the Spaniards start abusing, they get too nasty with their impositions, they will just kill everyone. So suddenly they will just go back to live as before, as nothing happened. Probably not as before, right? Without the Spanish masters. And then they will have to reconquer Yucatan every certain years. And this didn't happen one time. It happened a lot of times.
Wow.
So these guys were not taking just anything, right? So in that way, you can say, well, it's not the only area, I'm sure that happened, but they have a very distinctive personality. The people is really nice and interesting. The food is amazing. Nature, I don't have to tell you, I think it's the most beautiful beaches in the world down there. So yeah, it's a paradise within paradise for sure.
Yeah, and so like, does your average Mexico City boy have one vacation to the Yucatan in a lifetime, or is it a frequently reoccurring thing to the average, your average Mexican to do long? Because that's far away still. It's not get in the car and roll. That's a big decision, right? If you do it. You can do it. It's a Wisconsin to Florida drive, right? It's a long drive. Right? That's a commitment. Of course. Did you...
I have to say something here that might sound a little bit counterintuitive. If you tell me...
yeah, for sure.
If you tell me Cancun, for example, that is a place that is the easiest to travel because you have airports in there and stuff, right? We all know it's super beautiful, but it doesn't take my heart at all.
Right.
Like if I have to go Cancun, I'll be happy, I'll be going, but I will leave the place like I'm leaving the nightclub at 3. Where there's so many other places in Mexico.
Right.
That they have so much more soul. So if you really ask me, as a pilgrimage, a Mexican should go to Yucatan to see the nature beauty, yes. Probably to go to Yucatan and the cenotes, sure. But you are missing so much more of the richness of Mexico. You have Oaxaca, Puebla, Veracruz, you have Baja California, you have the desert, you have the mountains. There's so much richness in Mexico. And a lot of those places, you have to be there 2 days. And you will never want to leave, your heart tears apart because it's just amazing. While Cancun, I'm sure originally it was differently, but you've been there, right? So, you have all the hotels, you have all the development. You will probably never even meet a Mexican if you don't need to, right? Like everything is made for this massive industry. And if you move a little bit outside, it will be better, of course, right? But yeah, I wouldn't say like for every Mexican, it will be like, oh my God, we have to go there. And then if you go, of course, it's very convenient, similar to in the US, you have all these packages that you get on an airplane, you get a 7-day hotel, you get probably all-inclusive or stuff like this. So a lot of people will travel that way. If you tell me about people that is harder to travel, right? People that cannot just take a weekend off and have to really invest in a once-in-a-lifetime trip.
Right.
I don't think it will be anywhere near their top ranks.
Yeah. And it's interesting you say that. That brings up several thoughts that I've had, and some of which occurred for us during COVID. I remember they were promoting Thailand for Thais travel, trying to stimulate the economy. Do you remember that? And it was interesting because talking to my friends, folks are like, oh, I'd never been to X or Y. And I was like, really? Yeah. And they said, yeah, we went because it was easier and we couldn't fly out, and there was lots of formalities to flying. And so I always wondered that. But one of the big discoveries for me, and the reason I'm asking, was this, Copper Canyon Railway.
Yeah.
I did a tour, accidentally did one of these tours. I was like, oh man, I had no idea there was a 10 times bigger Grand Canyon 1,000 miles away from our Grand Canyon. Yeah, of course. And so the diversity of the Mexican countryside, if I can say that, because I haven't traveled through all of it or even much of it, was shocking to me as I did it, in the millennium at the turn of the century. And it always struck me as, I don't know how easy it is to travel between these places, and I wonder if, the Copper Canyon in teaching or high schools or grade school is that place that you go. Like for me, I guess in the United States, I've been to the Grand Canyon twice. One was flying, one was driving. So not a lot, and probably won't be a third time, and so it's as awesome as it is.
Yeah, it's just once. Right. And I will say the same, man. This canyon, I always wanted to go. Sadly, I could never, man. It was a little bit when you're living in Mexico, you're living the life of a Mexican,
Right.
which means you have very short holidays.
Yeah.
If you're employed, especially, you have like 7 days a year,
Yeah.
and you really have to choose, right?
Right.
So, it happens the same as here. If you have
Yeah.
3 days, you don't think I'm going to explore, the south of Italy. It's like, man, you will just fly to a hotel, sleep, and, try to recover a little bit from all the exhaustion, right? So that also happens, of course, when you're in Mexico. But yeah, this place like the Cooper Canyon are unbelievable. Some people will try to do it once. It's really time consuming to get there. It's not really easy to go to a lot of places.
Yeah.
Which I think is fantastic, because anything that is easy to get to in traveling, it becomes too commercial and it becomes a little bit less interesting. Just like Cancun. Sure, you wake up and you see the most beautiful ocean in the world, but then you turn around and everything is gone, right? You don't have the warmth of the people. You don't have the local cuisine. You don't have, everything that makes a place what it is. So I think that's okay too.
And so, Mexico City boy, not running around barefoot, shoes on, sidewalks,
So sad, I know. Right?
right. So, right. The flip flops here. You could show that. And did you stay there until 18? I mean, was it?
No, actually, until 30 something.
Okay, so you stayed a while.
Yeah, quite a while. I used to travel a lot, but never really moved away.
Yeah.
My brother did, like very young, but I actually just traveled for a while. Take 6 months. Maybe I was lucky sometimes to take a year, but yeah, kept living in Mexico City always.
Same general neighborhood, or did you move around?
Just moved a couple of times. Like when I was a kid, there was one place, and then from around 4th grade in school, then we moved somewhere else and stay around there. A really nice area, actually. Not nice in the way of having money and stuff like that. Like it was all right? But it was right between Coyoacan and Xochimilco, which are 2 places that you have to go to if you go to Mexico City, right? Coyoacan's amazing. Xochimilco is super traditional with like ancient culture. You can still see how they build the stuff that, Mexico City is built on a lake.
Right.
And, the Aztecs actually built these things called chinampas, that is like floating pieces of ground, of land, soiled, where you can grow things. And you can still see exactly all those things. You can still see them in Xochimilco. You have the canals and stuff.
I'm trying to see how that would be spelled, the spelling in my head. Xochimilco.
With an X.
Right.
And then the rest will just be easy.
Xochimilco. Yeah, that's funny. That X is real a surprise entry to the sort of the foreigner coming in saying like, wow, you got a lot of that. Jelha, Xochimilco.
Yeah, the X is
right. And you sort of got to figure out, how am I going to say that? Exelha?
Just think about chocolate.
Yeah.
Chocolate is an Aztec word, actually, and it's written with an X originally.
Nice.
Chocolatl. So the atl meaning water. So you have similar than then, just think about chocolate and you get the
Yeah. It's Coatl, I saw, was also a name online, which would be the first part of your name. Is your full name Coatl, or?
Yeah, that's my name. It's Coatl.
And so that end of it's water?
Actually, not in this case. In this case, it becomes Coatl. Coatl part, that will be snake.
Oh, okay. Uh-oh.
So yeah, there will be a complex word. Yeah. It's actually meaning obsidian snake. And it was the first Aztec emperor that consolidated the empire. And in the mythology, one of the 4 gods that hold the sky. So yeah, it's a pretty cool name.
Very. So it's Coatl is that god or that emperor?
The first time. Yeah.
What time would that
emperor.
be? What period of time are we talking?
The Aztecs.
Yeah.
So probably, man, I don't remember the years. It should be probably, so let's say 1,200, 1,300 perhaps. But we should Google that. Yeah, of course.
Okay, yeah. We try not to be informed here. We try to go blindly.
Yeah.
I don't even look it up. Frank and I are just like, no,
I'm sure I look up that when I was a kid like a million times, but it's just gone from my brain.
Yeah, no, well, it's cool. I mean, and I want to get your view of it. Even if we're wrong, people can write in and say you're both wrong, and I'd say fine. But it's. I grew up somewhere. I did my thing. You grew up somewhere. You did your thing. We're both here, and I'm just trying to see how paths converge. But you have these cool sort of historically relevant cities in this megalopolis, which has been the biggest city in the world for much of our lifetime. And then China came around and stuff sort of changed numerically.
Yeah.
But you're saying there's these 2 cities that you lived near that, kept the spirit alive, right? Kept the history of the place sort of fresh.
They are kind of neighborhoods.
Yeah.
Coyoacan is like a colonial place full of beautiful houses. you have this area that you go on the weekends and you have street performers, you have people selling stuff in the street, people eating snacks, just like a place you go. Like we miss that in Bangkok, right?
Yeah.
I really miss that dearly. Here you can go to a shopping mall or to a close place, but it's hard to find like a square where you can just go and be with the people, right?
Yeah.
And Coyoacán will be that experience, super traditional. So Xochimilco is also another neighborhood, but it's like, it used to be, of course, complete separate, right?
Yeah.
But they're really, really nice areas. Like for anyone visiting Mexico, should go those two. San Angel is also really close. So, this was my vicinity, right? That was like my extended neighborhood. So it was a fantastic place to be and just learn and discover all the stuff that's around.
And so what's the picture you have of yourself? Is it you in your younger you sitting picnicking with family members and the community around you, or walking and seeing artists and flamethrowers and guys painting or women painting? Or, what is that vision? You vandalizing and spraying graffiti, or, what is the thing, but that it was like the cultural center, so other people were doing similar things, right?
To be fair, I have a personal image of myself as a very boring person.
Okay.
Like I was a completely average kid from my place, I suppose, man.
So does an average kid carry a book to the park, or does he carry a rock, or does he get on a skateboard?
Go out and play with the other kids, whatever they're playing. Maybe, times have changed, right?
Soccer,
In those days, we have a bicycle. You go to the park. Maybe you will bring a ball and play football today. And, American football the next one.
No phone.
Yeah, no, of course, there was no internet. There were no phones, right? So it was completely different. And I used to be like a nice kid, like all Mexicans, we get very rebellious when we were teenagers. But apart of that, go to school. My parents were super... they had these very high ambitions on my education. Sadly, it never came to fruition, right? So, I will have to go. I learned electronic and guitar on Saturdays. I go to do karate 3 times a week. So they kept me really, really busy. So the little times that I had when I was a kid, it was like, okay, don't forget you have to study guitar. Don't forget you have to study for the piano class. Don't forget you have to do your homework. So I was this kind of, middle-class family, all very rounded, taken care of. You go and do the stuff. They open a shopping mall. You go to a restaurant. Not really, it was not really like, okay, let's go just play and discover. When I was a teenager, my mom was super paranoid about everything. So she was super strict, not letting me go out. And it kind of, I understand both sides. I should have been out. But then, of course, on the other side, when your neighbor gets robbed on the way to 7-Eleven, that is 2 squares away, and you live in a nice, close neighborhood, then, of course, I can imagine as a mother, you are like, no way, man.
Yeah, I mean, God bless mothers, right? The thinking they do for you as a kid, you sort of can't second guess that.
Absolutely.
How about the schooling, if I can ask, and was this a Catholic regime you were raised in, or was it not? Was it agnostic, or were mom and dad religious, or did they do church on Sundays?
Well, we are not Catholics. We have a different branch of religion, but a little bit of that.
Yeah.
However, in Mexico, just like in many countries, private education is a lot in the hands of these kind of Christian Catholic groups, right? The Jesuits everywhere. Even here in Thailand, you have the same, right?
Yeah.
So a lot of the schools that I went to were actually owned by this kind of people. It doesn't transpire much, to be honest. Like we don't have to pray. We don't have a church in place. I went always to La Salle schools, La Salle in Spanish. La Salle, they also have it here, right? It's actually global. But it was actually quite okay, Apart of having to learn the biography of these, whoever La Salle was, man, that was extremely annoying.
The explorer, La Salle?
No, it's called San Juan Bautista de La Salle.
Okay.
And it's a French monk, priest, whatever, man, that started this education, just like the Jesuits, right?
Yeah.
So we have to learn what he did that I don't remember a single word, obviously, man. And that's it, It was like very, very non-religious. They just pay more attention to education, so it was cool. It's not like private education here. It's just a little higher than public education, a little bit more care. But that's it. There was not much religious influence. Now, switching from what is my formation, not being a Catholic, and seeing how Catholicism affects the other and religion affects the other, of course, it's highly embedded in our culture, man, and it's a terrible influence. I'm not saying religions do not have any place in society or beliefs do not have any place in society. I think they can even have a positive effect on the understanding of people about rules and social values. But when you have a religion like Catholicism that is full of guilt and reproach, and well, pretty much you should be dead and in prison and in hell unless you change yourself. It's like, man, I was born yesterday, I haven't done anything, right? So I think it's a terrible thing on the other side, right? And yeah, that I can see clearly, not being completely brainwashed by having to go to church on Sundays.
So the Universidad La Salle, is that, it's always tricky for me. We have definitions that falls in. So university to me, I think I just said this last week to someone, Andrew Benfield, is 18 to 21 or 22 in terms of age. Is that the same Universidad for you, or is that more of a high school?
Universidad for us will be college.
Okay, so same with me. Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. And so you did that. That's okay. So that was still in Mexico by your earlier summary, Mexico City.
Yeah. I mean, I was in there from third grade of primary basic school. You know, there's La Salle from the very beginning. So I was all my life in those kind of things. So it was like a long run.
Yeah.
It was all right until college, because college, it was really, really with the strong presence of these priests that belongs to the La Salle, blah, blah, blah. And that was horrible, man, because it's people with very narrow perspective, right? So that's really something they tell me it's a very good university now in Mexico, but it's something I don't desire to my worst enemy. I think we deserve freedom of mind and speech and be able to exercise our minds, not just comply to some form of following.
God, I'm drawing a blank on my American history now that you're embarrassing me with all your knowledge of the Mexican history. Is the I thought like Wisconsin, my whole state had La Salle mixing up in there with some local folks. That is a discoverer.
Maybe. Honestly, I wouldn't know about any other place. Just
Good. I'm embarrassed. Frank, didn't MK? Did she go to La Salle University in the Philippines? You remember that? No. What was the name of it? Yeah, but he was saying it's around the world. So maybe, maybe this is the gathering. Maybe this is like the cult of La Salle is just going to naturally drift to our podcast.
Perhaps. And it was really funny because I really hated my university. I hated it with all my heart. Interestingly, you know, when I told my wife I come from there, like we've already been married for many, many years, she's like, oh, you went to La Salle? Oh, so you actually might be smart. It's like, seriously? That is the only indication? So probably I'm not at all, right?
Nothing you've said to me, honey.
That's the only thing that actually I was like, well, university finally paid off.
Well, there you go. A smart man. We have a smart man here today.
According to the university.
There we go.
Don't judge me on that.
And so, any leanings in those first 30 years towards Itzco's favorite cooking dishes and sitting over the open flame, or is this not the direction that you're going at that point in time?
You know, it's really funny. I never noticed a lot of these things. When I was living already here, when I was on my, I don't know, older, right? And Facebook started going anywhere. People from my childhood start adding me, you know, it's like it happened to all of us. And I swear I didn't remember anything. I didn't remember anything before high school. I didn't remember names. I didn't remember my teachers. I had like fade memories of everything. So even people I spent years with, I'll see the name and I have no idea who these people are, man. It was really weird. Then I started noticing,
Why do you think that is?
Luck, perhaps, and I really don't know.
I mean, like, did all of them beat you up, or like was walking home?
There were good times and bad times. I just didn't. It's just like my brain fully erased that. Somebody told me maybe it's good because that means you're living in the present and not staying in the past. It might be, or I may just have a very weird brain or just being an idiot. I don't know, but I didn't remember things.
You went to La Salle. You can't be an idiot.
Well, yeah, there you go, man. We have to throw the wife on that one, man.
So no, in those periods that you forget, I'm curious, would you forget family events? So you have a brother, right?
Yeah,
has an awesome name. You guys both have awesome names.
Yeah, his name is super cool, man. Tlagui Cole.
Talawi?
Tlagui.
Oh, jeez.
The full name is Tlagui Cole.
Tlahui. Wow, that's awesome.
And actually, that one has a fantastic story, man. That's a super cool warrior from Tlaxcala. I don't know if you know that Aztecs and Tlaxcaltecas. So the Aztecs conquered much of Mexico, most of it. So they never took over Tlaxcala. And the reason is because they were such brave warriors that they thought it makes no sense to take over these people. We don't want our army to go lazy because we don't have any more wars to fight. So they come to an arrangement with the Tlaxcaltecas that every 7 years they will have some special kind of war called the Guerras Floridas.
Just the deal.
Yeah, that's the deal, you know. So you can keep your army in shape. We can keep ours. You keep your freedom. And anyway, we both want warriors for sacrifices. So whoever you take is yours. Whoever we take is ours. And it was actually an honor if they capture to die fighting. So this guy called Tlahuicole was a super good fighter that was captured. And the way that they fight this is this guy will start fighting against Aztec warriors, but they will swap the weapons. So instead of giving him a good weapon, they will give him clay weapons. And Tlahuicole actually went and defeat all the Aztecs, you know. So they sent one after the other, and they said like, bro, man, like, okay, you can go. But of course, Tlahuicole, being this kind of warrior, this level of warrior, were like, no way, man. I was captured to do this and to die here. So let's keep going.
Wow.
So Tlahuicole, you know, have like street names in Tlaxcala, and you have like some statues of the guy. So he was like, Mr. Cool. My father is from Tlaxcala, and he always liked the name and like this idea. So he always told my mom, my first child, Tlahuicole. The rest, you can choose whatever name you want. And then my mother was like, well, it will be a little bit stupid to have a Tlahuicole and a Peter, right? So let's choose a name that kind of go with it. And that's why she started researching and like it's called.
First
but
ever,
that's Tlahuicole, man. Yeah, it's a cool name.
Wow, so I asked you if you remember family events, and then this comes up. So
I can go back to the family.
Yeah, no, and there's so much more I want to ask about that, because it shows. That was a great summary, accurate or not, Google verifiable or not, whatever.
Yeah.
Is it a true story what you just told me in your mind?
Yeah.
And so there was a person who got the clay knife and had to go deal with that adversary.
Actually, not a knife. It's like a mace.
Okay, so it's clay mace.
The name actually means warrior that goes with clay weapons in his hand. Probably has a different name, but now we have that. That's it. That's the meaning.
So is there a burial place or a commemorative place where he is?
No, because this happened long before, you know. So
Yeah.
it's more like this is really the long before the conquest, right? So of course, there's only like the stories, the signs, and stuff. But you know, Tlaxcala it remained very important through history.
Yeah.
Mexicans, we have a very distorted vision of Tlaxcala. We see them as the traders because they ally with the Spaniards when they came. But you know, this is something they did everywhere. Like when the Brits arrived to India or anywhere else, of course they didn't come with the people and the numbers to take over things. So what they did is they looked for the enemies, right? They start making alliances with people that want to take down the people on the top power.
Right.
And in this case, in Mexico, as you can imagine, the Aztecs being an empire,
Right.
you know, they of course had a lot of enemies. So the Tlaxcaltecas play a very important role in helping the Spaniards to take over the empire. So we see them as traders. Yet at the same time, they are super important. A lot of our
That's all right. No
a
problem.
lot of our culinary heritage, a lot of things that are really cool come actually from Tlaxcala, and we just don't really know it, right?
So is there a this is so cool. This sounds like stuff that, had I known about it as in the early days, I would have read everything there was. I would have ordered books on it from the book club. So is there a movie about either of these, your namesakes, yours or your brothers? And is there like a series? And did Sam Smith play, Telescala, was he the best version of it, and the Robert Downey Jr. tried one and he was horrible? Is it that much of a fabric as opposed to other things which we know are? I'm sure there are Aztec gods or Mayan gods that are epic and have songs and movies.
I don't think we have any movies about any of those things, man. Which we should, right? Like, with the
Well, you'd
stories are
figure,
pretty
right?
Cool, right?
If
Exactly.
you're-
You'll figure it will be like, guys, let's be proud of our heritage and let's show the world. But it seems we're not very good at representing. I suppose when you come from a country like Mexico, there's a lot of richness, but there's also a lot of historical distortions on our understanding. You know, we hate the Spaniards. We believe the Tlaxcaltecas are traitors. But at the same time, that's who we are.
Yeah.
You know, it doesn't matter how you want to roll it or cook it. It's like, oh, the Spaniards were bastards. Of course they were. But it's undeniable that a lot of us have that on our blood. I'm sorry.
No, that's all right. We got a buddy, Jose. He doesn't mean you, Jose. He loves you. But
so you know, we have this distortion on our understanding, because if I'm half of something and I hate that half,
what's the
I
deal?
cannot be fully happy. You know, we have to embrace what we are and what we were. We are very proud of our indigenous people, and yet we mistreat them all the time. You know, we are not racist, but we are highly classist. So in a way, it's terrible, that we talk with pride of some things while at the same time we don't give any respect or help to these people. And then we hate the Spaniards, even though they are part of our blood.
Right.
So I think we still in that, which is funny, right? It takes hundreds of years to really grow your mind over historical events.
Right.
And one day probably we'll come to fully embrace this. I think we're moving there, but probably in that way to really say, hey, let's take some of this stuff from our history and really make something cool. That probably still to come.
Yeah, so interesting. So help me contextualize then what it was I was seeing. So I get off the plane in Cancun. You've already told me not representative. Agreed. Checked into a hotel that was not representative. Agreed. Rented a car. Agreed.
Wow, I mean,
and then I'm at a cenote diving, and I'm like, all right, I'm an inch away from dying here. So this, all right. So now we're in nature. So I got far enough out of town, and then there's a pyramid or ruins, right? And what am I being taught, or what is the government preserved, and what is it trying to tell me with that? Because that's there. It's big. A lot of people go to see it. There's postcards. There's stuff. So that's cultural preservation and heritage, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you have movies on that stuff?
No, not much, man.
Right. So this is the gap I'm seeing here, right? It's like, wait a minute, because that was all I saw. Like if in the abstract, between meals and scuba diving, like that was all I saw. And I was like, they're on top of this, right? Like digging it, probably T-shirts I didn't get, design that looked Aztec or Mayan or,
Yeah, we do have, of course.
Right. And so like.
But it's not like Thailand, right? That you have movies about like.
The elephant dude. Yeah, exactly. Right.
Or kings and stuff like that.
Dynasties.
Like they do that in a lot of places, exactly. So I'm not sure, man, if there's anything recent, but nothing comes to my mind that is really like,
recent would suggest like not a lot.
Exactly.
Right? So,
exactly.
That's so strange because it seems like it's clearly part of the nonsensical mythology that I would have the translation of. It wouldn't be the history. It'd be mythology by the time it got to me because it would be like, we would have turned it into our version of that.
Yeah.
Like, okay, so, we were building highways and there were Aztec jungles that were full of snakes and Harrison Ford, and stuff like we were, just ludicrous, right? Just like, okay, and that's my best imagery of it. Like, I wonder if the big ball rolled him over when he was down there. Just some nonsense, right? And, what a strange thing. And so when you were at LaSalle, at any phases, were there history classes, and where did your history class pick up? Was it?
Oh, we do study all that. I think we're talking about different levels, right? Like when we have
for sure.
When you have the site, when you go to the pyramid and it's well preserved and studied, you're talking very specialized, right? You're talking like archaeology, really educated people preserving culture.
Mm-hmm.
Then when you go to, do we study this as a matter of history? Of course we do.
Yeah.
From that to being part of, when you talk about movies and series, it's actually into the collective psyche of what's cool and modern, right? So I suppose that's the area that perhaps at some point it touched, perhaps it will come. But of course, when we go school, we actually have really, really good education in Mexico. I was very surprised to discover that. So of course, we study, of course, universal history and Mexican history. Focus on pre-Hispanic history probably is not as strong.
Right.
Perhaps, of course, you don't have the same amount of documentation. Perhaps it's just, I don't know why would exactly that be, right? But of course, you just study that like when you study universal story, you go through massive phases of history. Like, there was a guy called Confucius, and it seems like you just skip 3,000 years of history on that, right? So I suppose it's a little bit like that. But in general, education-wise, of course, we learn about a lot of this.
Yeah, and I didn't mean to suggest yours education was inferior or better than mine.
No.
And it sounded that way for sure, so I apologize for that. But the funny thing is we have at best 300 years of U.S. history, and then sort of we ignore a large chunk of what was actually going on up there, which is sort of ridiculous in its own version. But so then we'd have, like you said, world history. So you'd have this other stuff, and it'd be like, all right, well, we'll see, whatever on that.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
But you guys had, and it's clear there was such a massively long runway down there with epic cultures, right? Just these, and we're not even sure how much we understand of that yet, right? It's just,
absolutely.
There could be 50 layers of it still buried that you're going to go find out they had an interstate. right? Like,
Yeah,
there was
well,
like
as
a
many
toll
times we
booth,
have
right?
discovered, right? Yeah, of course,
This was the toll collector spot here, right
we
next to the
actually have
cenote.
evidence that we were doing commerce all the way to with the Incas in Peru.
Right.
So there are traces, that there are certain animals, there's vestige of things that didn't occur naturally in some places. But you learn that when you go to the archaeology sites, visit the museum. So of course it will be a little bit more like made mainstream, right? Like, okay, when you go to school, you should learn this kind of stuff, right? Like the world didn't start the day that the Spanish people came, right? There's a lot of things, we know them, but probably, going a little bit deeper, it wouldn't hurt. At least it would be pretty cool to know.
Yeah, I mean, and I think you've just sort of crystallized what my thinking was, is there could be a large constituency that says, well, let's pick it up when the Spaniards came. Let's get it going from there, because prior to that, then we're a little fuzzy.
Yeah, exactly.
These dudes kept books better here, so let's read those and bound them and send them back to some library. Yeah, strange.
On the other hand, it will make perfect sense, and maybe in different eras of study, not necessarily there in history. For example, Mexico is the second country in the world with the largest amount of local languages after India.
The second after Indian local languages. So
dialects, languages.
Yeah, so are there any in Mexico City?
There actually are. People still speak, Mexica, which is the local. Nahuatl, actually, sorry, not the Mexicas are the actual name of the people that descend from the Aztecs, and they speak Nahuatl. Yeah, you still have places like this. And if you move like 50 kilometers or 100 kilometers in the direction of Puebla, I remember once I was driving and I decided to take a different path, not like the main highway.
Right.
Got lost and ended up in this little town where all the women are dressed in traditional clothing that I have never seen anywhere, and nobody speaks Spanish. So I couldn't ask directions because I couldn't communicate in Spanish. And I'm
50 miles outside of Mexico City.
Puebla is just super, super close, It's nowhere far. It's on the way to the Gulf. Probably a little bit larger because Mexico is really big, right? So when I think just out of Mexico, it might be 3 hours driving.
Yeah.
But that's 3 hours driving is nothing for the size of countries in the Americas. So you do have a lot of these populations that speak Otomi, Nahuatl, a lot of other languages. We also have a lot of, there were not only the Aztecs, like the Mexicas and the Mayas. We have like hundreds of those. We have the Olmecs with massive heads. There's different layers of civilizations, right? That some disappeared before others started. We have pyramids that are before anyone that we know, even in Mexico City,
Right.
So I think understanding this also defines how these people, their culture, their thoughts. Something that is really cool, actually, and I think that Mexico did well, is that the public books, for example, for primary school, for public education, they exist in every language. So in every dialect that we have, the books are there. But once again, right, why we people in the city don't get a lot more of, let's understand the cultural background of this. Instead of learning the 31 states plus a federal district, why don't we learn that? Yeah, but we also learn that, right? And to me, you tell me, what is the capital of Quintana Roo? It's like, sure, it's cool to know, man. But wouldn't I prefer to know, like, tell me about these people? Because the way they behave, they think, they act is still influenced by those, whatever culture there is. How different is to one another? What are their values? Perhaps I would love to know how the people that live in there have certain kind of ideas, does it affected by, by history, right? So I think it will be really interesting to learn that. We do that in many places in the world, right? We try to understand that when you talk about Thais, for example, we know that this is not the last 2 centuries since like the French and the Brits came around, right? There's a lot of things that define them. When you think about the Japanese, I don't know, man. You are talking already about the Stone Ages, and some guys are telling you can already see in Japan that they pay more attention to the handcraft of the axe or the knife. It's like, wow, really? But truly, they do, man. So why we're ignoring all this in other places? I think it will be really cool to do, right? And maybe I'm just ignorant. Some people are doing, but I would have liked that to be part of my education and really get a deeper understanding of something of that magnitude and richness.
Yeah. Well, good comments. I mean, there's again a lot in that. So you said there are dialects or languages, hundreds?
Yeah.
Thousands?
I think it was 300 last time I saw.
Okay, so but more than one in the United States.
Well, it's different, right? Like, because if you were really thinking, when we think about the United States, I think no one is thinking the people from the United States, right? we are starting from the time of the colonists, pretty much.
Right.
So you are thinking as descendants, so
Indigenous,
really
yeah,
some of the people.
Right.
Probably if you go to the indigenous, you will also have like 100 or so, right?
Yeah. Interesting. And so India, you're saying is
It's the number one,
top
actually.
vote getter. I didn't know that. Interesting. See, won't check that on Google, but I'll trust you on that. And so when you're a kid, then do you remember events? Are you or your brother, or I didn't ask if there are other family members, but are you the family historian or not? Do they turn to you for factual accuracy? Who won that game?
Sometimes.
Okay, so sometimes.
My brother has the best memory when it comes to pretty much anything, right? He really remember everything. Like as much as I didn't remember anything before high school, he does remember absolutely everything. But let me go back to that one because that's an interesting thing that relates to the topic of the day, I suppose.
Right.
Lately, like the last 5 years, I started discovering that I do have very clear memories of things, but it's always food related.
Food related. Go figure.
So if you tell me, do you remember this person? I'm like, well, yeah, of course. I tried the chiles rellenos de picadillo in his house, and we were like 7. I remember he lived in a second floor. We went up. I didn't like the first dish, but that was a revelation because my mom always cooked cheese. It's like, well, wait, I don't remember anything. I don't remember really. It's blurry. But when it comes to food, I seem to always have very clear memories. Of course, the food has to be special, but I suppose in that way, I was always like, I always loved eating. And the fact that my memories surrounding food are so clear, it's something that perhaps shows, right? Why did I end up where I end up?
So do you think, like, if you think about a memory right now, a meal with that guy, with Lenny from southern Mexico City, you went to his house, can you look down and see the plate, or is it not that vivid? Is it not that clear? Is it not?
I remember the flavor, man.
Yeah. And so it's almost there, right? It's like,
it's very clear.
Like the cutlery or the color of the plate, maybe if you pushed yourself. Well, that's interesting, isn't it?
It's weird, right?
Yeah.
The brain is weird.
And do you remember like learning how to ride a bike? Do you remember learning how to throw? Do you learning the first time you broke a window with a rock, either accidentally or intentionally?
No, man. Probably remember some of the first rides in bike, but like,
first goal score in football or soccer?
I used to be terrible, and I don't think I ever scored in soccer.
First karate lesson?
I will remember a little bit of karate, but that will be like specific, either very good events or very traumatic ones.
The
like
chicken wing you had on the way home?
that will be perhaps one. Like, for example, after going to karate, there was a fantastic ice cream shop on the way home, man.
Well, that's every kid's dream, right?
Yeah. Exactly. And it was not like an everyday event, but like my mother will have to be in the mood and the traffic too.
Yeah.
But that I will remember.
Well, let's break this down then. I'd be curious. Were you or in your family, and I'm not going to call out your mom or dad here, but were you healthy eaters in any conventional type of perspective? Like, let's go eat your lettuce. Stop drinking Dr. Pepper. Don't bring those home. When I give you money, get the milk. Don't get the Dr. Pepper.
Yeah, I see, man. I mean, my mom was always very... every Mexican mom will actually be very much like, you have to eat nutritious food. Of course, even like now, I talk to people, they have no idea what nutritious means, right? I think in those times it was easier. I'm talking that I was born in 74. So I grew up in 70s, 80s. In that time, we really didn't have that much. Mexico used to be closed in that time. We didn't get all the American sweets. We didn't have any, actually.
Okay.
The borders were closed.
Yeah, good.
So if you get a chocolate, it was a local chocolate. We didn't have... imported
Snickers
motorcycles. We don't have
Nestle.
Snickers, Three Musketeers. All the stuff when it came, it was like illegal imported, right?
Yeah.
So in that way, perhaps that was lucky because obviously once you have access to all the sweets in the world, you're going to discover something you love, right?
Yeah.
And we did have some good stuff. The family, I will say my mom always took good care of that. My father used to take us a lot to restaurants. Yeah. And he was really cool, with me. My brother loves sweets. He will never let my brother order sweets. My brother wants to start with dessert. My dad will be no. Me, on the other hand, I want to eat half of the menu. I will be like, ooh, let's try this and this and this. Yeah. And my dad will be like, yeah, let the kid order. Yeah. So that was. But
you were probably eyeballing stuff like, oh, that pork looks like it has a good sauce, or putting it together.
Honestly, I only remember that part. I don't really. Then we stopped going because I was super delicate. I get sick all the time, like stomach-wise. Of course, the food standards were not ideal, obviously.
Maybe.
So at some point, I had to, we have to stop going so often out until.
Was it spicy or was it bacterial?
Yeah, I will get properly sick. I will need like antibiotics, like injections.
So not like the Veracruz ultra spicy sauce was crushing you every time you'd go out and you dump a bottle on. Yeah.
No, it was really properly sick.
Yeah, because I wonder here in the beginning how much of my own distress was just I put in that extra inch of spice and it knocked me out for 3 days, but it wasn't bacterial, versus other places where I've lived where I've been, I've had typhoid, just oops, like that was not the best plan, whatever that was.
Thailand is crazy, because you go anywhere to eat and, I swear I've been some places in the countryside where there's a single guy selling food and you see the flies on the food and you think I'm going to die. But then I never died. I never even get sick, right? So somehow things are different. I don't know. It might be the way that they grow their vegetables. Perhaps they use cleaner water. They used to sell that they use recycled water. Well, not recycled. It's more like the dirty water, that they filter, but not properly. So perhaps it's really something like that. But overall, Thailand, I think, is very safe for food.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not trying to drag this discussion anywhere, but there are some extreme cultural similarities, in particular when you talk about some of the topics we're talking about, which are just uncanny to me. I mean, they're just like, oh, this is so, even though it's radically different,
but it's the same,
right? And sort of the cut up mango or the spices, which you're looking like, wow, that's sort of the same preparation. And there's this shot on Bangkok Eats TV with the young lady who did that. Visit to your restaurant, which we'll talk about, Missing Burro. And I was looking at these dishes as they're laid out, and I was like, wow, that's remarkably similar to another show that I watched on some Sunday morning show for a Thai restaurant, just in how these little individual portions were allocated. And I thought, is that accidental or is that just the nature of the similarity of these cuisines? It was just funny to me. And I watched that yesterday when I was looking at it. So interesting. So brother and this is the brother who's here with you now, and you guys have the store together, or no? Is that accurate in the?
He was.
Okay.
But he relocated to Mexico last year. So now he's living in Los Cabos, Baja California. So he moved from another paradise to yet another paradise.
Right, with more Americans. And so was he the cooking half of the duo?
No, actually, none of us is the cooking part. I'm the eating part, and he was just I think he never really get into these restaurant stuff. It was always me that wanted to have something like this. He was more like helping me and hanging. But no, we actually have a fantastic Mexican chef from the very beginning.
Okay.
So when I was looking for the place, my brother tried the food of this guy, and he was like, this. He just tried the salsa. And that's very normal. A lot of people just get the chips and salsa and tell me, I told him the food is going to be good the moment I tasted the salsa. I'm like, okay, that's a quick assessment. But I understand, when you go to very Tex-Mex places, it tastes like they opened that can of tomato pico de gallo that is more like sweetish. And you immediately know, well, this is not going to be, well, they didn't even make the pico de gallo, right? They copy a can. Yeah. So when your inspiration and when your target of flavor is the flavor of a can, then most probably, of course, it's not going to be good, right? So.
Okay, well, good. Well, let's get back to that in a second, but I want to talk about that. And so then you're moving through your first 30 years Mexico City. Do you leave the country, or do you stay in Mexico after you leave Mexico City?
Travel a while, since I'm like 19, probably. Went to New Zealand, Australia for a trip, then went for a few times to Europe, then come travel Asia for like a year. Mm-hmm. So the base was Mexico City always.
And was any of that early travel food destinations, or was it just I'm on the road, ma? See, I'll come back and see you soon.
It was more like on the road. I suppose just like you like music, and I'm sure you always come back with music, even if you don't travel for music, you come back with it, right?
Sure.
I used to say the same. Whenever you go, you have to bring back some music. You have to try some food. Maybe now I will say you have to drink whatever they are fermenting in there, right? There's certain experiences you have to have, and certainly eating is one of those. But yeah, traveling made my life amazing and miserable because, you know, my mother will always mock me, right? Because I go back Mexico, I wake up and I'm like, man, I want some yogurt. And my mom will be like, are you sure it is yogurt what you want? It's like, yeah, just some nice, you know, nice thick yogurt. So she will come back, buy me the 3 best yogurts she could find, and they were garbage. And she's like, I'm like, what yogurt are you thinking about? It's like, well, the yogurt in Australia and New Zealand, it's out of this world, you know? And I thought it was the same. Or, you know, you're missing the meat pie that they make in New Zealand, Australia. It's early in the morning. They give you out of the oven this meat pie. And you're always just thinking, sure, you have the Mexican quesadillas, but someday you wake up and you want that one, right? And then you start collecting from countries around the world food that you are like, ooh, wouldn't it be awesome to have this for dinner? Yeah. Which is another reason that I really enjoy cooking. I love cooking, actually. I don't cook for the restaurant, but I love cooking. And, you know, that was always a way to close that gap of misery, you know, like I really want to eat, like, I don't know, it can be fish and chips, right? It's not the same to eat fish and chips. We didn't even have fish and chips in Mexico. Of course not. So, you know, after you eat it in, you know, I tried that in Auckland, New Zealand, you are by the ocean, you stop at the shop and they give you, you know, a newspaper, like very traditional. Sometimes you want that, right? So just having the ability to replicate whatever you love from other countries was always amazing.
Yeah, I mean, and it's very funny you use that as the example because Mexican food in my travels has always been my sort of, and I'm sorry if I called it Mexican food, but that's what I call it. So I'm an idiot for using that term. I'm sure it's not appropriate. Food from your country.
Mexican food.
Right. Is, you know,
there's no appropriate.
I land, I find it, and it's my anchor to sort of, it's not hamburgers, it's not pizza, which you'd figured be my sort of go-tos for America. But, you know, and in Thailand, sort of breaking down the different types of Mexican that are available is now an option, yours included, right? I mean, so you, and I remember being startled at the feel of the food that you put on the table. And when I was looking for silverware, I'm not sure if you were there, but, you know, someone said, use your hands, son. You know, just it's like, okay.
Yeah, perhaps that was me. Or my brother. He's also very direct man.
It was this big, right? So it was like, of course, you know, you're not going to sit there and try and dissect something that's not that big. But it was, and I remember just the sort of the moistness of the pork. And I'm sorry if this is not what you like to hear, but, and then the sort of, it was clear that there was some application of a sauce or of a dressing or of a prep for the tortilla, if you call it that. And it was on my hands, and I was there, and I was like, oh, okay, this is different here. Yeah, this is bringing back some memories. I'm not sure of where, if it's Yucatan or Mexico City or, you know, Tijuana or wherever I was, but like, yeah, this tastes like I'm back there. And I was like, well, that's a shocker.
That was always the idea. You know, like before we open, one day before opening, I'm talking to a really good friend called Eric, man. And he asked me, okay, the guy does UX, right? He's a massive, fantastic guy. He lives here too. I'm like, okay, what is your definition of success? Like, what are you trying to do? You're trying to get money. You're trying to, so what about if things are going bad? Will you start selling burritos? What is it, right? What are you after? That was a great question, right? Because it helped me clarify what was in my mind. But, you know, once you put it in words, it's something easier to come back without getting confused. And it was that, right? It was like, well, I'm not in this one for money because the restaurant, it's a hobby, right? I do my living out of IT. I'm like, okay, what I really want is to show people the food that I love, the richness of our food, the flavors, in a completely authentic manner. And of course, I don't want to pay people to do this, right? Like, I'm not expecting to run on losses and keep putting money in so people can try the food, right? It has to be self-sustainable. Right. But that's it, you know. That was always the principle. And yeah, that's it.
Well, that's interesting. Yeah, I get it. At some point, you can't finance being a cultural steward anymore. Like,
yes, exactly.
Right, yeah, this is authentic, but, you know, I'm losing money.
And there's also the concept of value. You know, when you give things for free, people think they have no value. So you should never give anything of value for free, even if you can afford it. Yeah. You know, people have to understand that it has a cost, and then they will not tell you it's fantastic out of, oh, it's free, or you're my friend. They will have to really say, yes, this is worth this. I will take this over that, right? And that only comes to our mind when you are actually, when things have a cost. Otherwise, it's like, Hey, will you do this? Yeah, well, if it's free.
Yeah.
Like, well, that means nothing, right? When you have to choose, will you go to the mountains or to the beach? Now you have a cost in the change at least.
Right.
So I think that's important too.
Right. So I mean, the super affluent obviously have every choice. So maybe there is a group of people who don't have to do that consideration. But I get exactly what you're saying, and I get
Even for them, right?
Yeah.
I think
I don't know.
At a certain, I mean, I'm also not part of that group, to be honest, man. So yeah, let's not get in there, man. Whatever they do, they know, man.
yeah, maybe it's the beach and the mountain. That's their choice.
Shall I buy the beach or the mountain, right?
Well, that's interesting. I mean, and it's interesting. So you threw out some new facts that I feel it's fair to ask about now. So, University La Salle, mid 90s ish. Are you studying IT? Is the goal to come out of that? Because IT back then was 2 cans and a string, right?
Yeah, it was nothing, man. I agree.
Coding, Fortran or something.
Actually, it's a lot worse, man. You know, when I was a kid, like around 10, 11 probably, my father has this fantastic friend, really cool guy, man. And he worked on IT. I don't know, I never knew what he did, but he was supposed like a genius. My father will tell me, go to the office of these guys, there's monitors everywhere. Like, I never even seen a monitor, man. I know what a TV looks like. So I'm like, okay. And this guy will come to our house, really nice guy, and tell us stories about all his friends that are complete genius. Like, oh, this guy, he learned a language in a night because he has to finish a project. I don't know what's a language, right? But for me, learning a language sounds like, wow, I barely speak Spanish, man. Like learning a computer language must be. But then he tells us how all of these guys are going crazy. So this guy that learned a language overnight, he goes every day to recharge under the sun because he believes otherwise his power will go down or some bullshit. So I'm like, wow.
Yeah.
I'm an impressionable kid, and I think it doesn't look good, man. I don't want to go crazy on this stuff, right? So that was the beginning. The second is IT was really boring. And the school that I wanted to study, they have only cybernetics. And it has like, it's so weird.
Yeah.
And at the end, I decided I don't go for IT, which was perhaps the worst mistake or the best decision in my life. I didn't study IT, I studied business, which is incredibly boring and not rewarding in my mind, man. It's like, sure, I know accounting and a little bit of finance. I went through marketing. But if you ask me, I was for 5 years listening to obvious stuff. Like when you buy stuff, you have to get 3 quotations to make sure you're getting the cheaper and the good value for the company. It's like, really, Einstein? I will never have done that. I thought I would just go and say, I have money. Who wants to give me things? The 5 years of studying business sounded like that to me, right? Of course, like I said, probably was a really poor choice because I ended up living out of IT.
Yeah.
I never really quit IT. I always kept working on the side. I work also on business, but computers were always at my heart. It was perhaps the best decision, though, because I know a lot of engineers. I know a lot of people that went through IT. And sadly, their mind is very squared on the IT. And they're incapable of communicating with the people on business. And you're always serving someone else, right? So you have a good understanding of the dynamics of business, the dynamics of people, and then you have a really good understanding of how systems can join in. Then you become kind of a bridge, right? So that's what I say. Perhaps it was actually a good decision because I never felt any handicap on my knowledge of IT.
Interesting.
Learning by myself was, I think I'm in a better position than people that actually study engineering and went through the stuff they hate. A lot of them barely can program. So I used to actually teach these people programming in the National University in Mexico. I became a teacher there later. So, in a way, I think it was all right not to go through the IT way. Just keep the love for it.
Were you a reader growing up? You said you didn't have a lot of spare time, and when you did.
But books were always in the house. Like my parents are huge readers. Even today, you find them pretty much all day reading. And we have a massive library in the house, like my father had probably thousands of books. So from very little, it was like, why don't you read one of these? I think one of my first books was like The Divine Comedy by Dante, which is not very suitable for kids.
Right.
Right. But it was cool. We had lots of encyclopedias. We have a lot of stuff. And there was always not only my parents, but like the whole family was like that. So, reading a full encyclopedia of history will be cool. So we were never imposed to read, but it was always presented to something that was really cool and entertaining.
Yeah.
So yeah, later on especially, we'll always go, like all book lovers will go buy 10 books and just have them in the house. And it'll be like my father, my brother, me, my mom, we will just read them in succession, and that'll be, it was good.
Was there a bias towards Mexican authors or Mexican writers, or was it purely international?
I never really enjoyed Mexican authors at that time, or Latinos. Now it's different, but same as I hated history of Mexico. Like when we were talking about education, universal history seems to have more of a general motive, probably because it's more exciting. You have the whole world to choose and millions of, thousands of years at least. When it came to Mexican history, it was, I suppose it's also your country, it hurts. So this guy is doing something cool, and then they kill him. It's like, what's up, guys?
Right.
And then the other one, and they kill him. There's a lot of things that you start learning, and it all feels too personal. It feels like, well, we're a bunch of terrible people. So of course that felt that way. And when we study, I read, of course, a lot of Mexican authors because we have to do for secondary school and high school. We go through a lot of those books. But after the revolution, you have a lot of these writers that start thinking that we're the cosmic race and that the new coolest thing in the world will come out of the mix of multiple races from the indigenous heritage, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. And, at some point it feels like this is too much patriotism for me, man. I don't need this trip on culture, right? I want to read something good. So if I were to read a novel, it doesn't have any specific extra brownie points because you are choosing a theme that seems to be more related to my origins, right? Yeah. I want to read a good story. It's not only about the story, it's the beauty of the writing. There's so much to find in a book, right? The presentation of new ideas that can be completely separated from anything else. So on the one hand, you can appreciate that, right? Now, if I really want to go for a book that talks about a specific topic, then I read a lot of nonfiction. Yeah. So it will be, I'd rather let's read some history, let's read about these kinds of people, these kind of cultures, or just general other stuff, right? So I'm very much towards nonfiction later on.
Yeah. And so then if you're doing business and then it converts to IT or e-business or however you're going to label the composite now, right? You have multiple skill sets, and you've done teaching, which is even sort of stranger of the whole thing, right? It's like the ability, to get sort of lessons out and concise to folks who don't know it is a skill set, right? I mean, that's maybe a hardest one. IT takes over at some point, or is it a means to an end?
Well, it was always a hobby. Yeah. To be honest, I was very lucky that I get bored with games very quickly. So I got my first computer when I was on third grade of secondary school. So it will be like grade 9 for you guys. And, it was still with a green screen. Mine was orange only. Then swap for 16 colors. I'm from that time. And of course, I like gaming. I play games, but I get bored quickly. So then it came with a programming manual for GW Basic, which I will just go over it. And I'm always learning stuff like that. And then I go for business. But I decide to change paths when I'm in Australia. I'm in a hostel in the Golden Mile, and there's these ads in the hostel. Like, okay, we're recruiting for development. And the requirements were pretty simple, right? They were like super basic languages and databases that, in my mind, anyone can know. Mm-hmm. But one of the jobs, and it's a Golden Mile, and I'm traveling, right? So I'm like, and I will do whatever to stay here. Right. And these guys are paying, one of them, I still remember, was $256 a day, and the other one is paying $47 an hour. And me being a mechanic, like I'm making numbers, and it's like that's a lot of money, man. Right. And I can stay in the Golden Mile, like I could just take a year off, enjoying this fantastic life,
It's $1,000 a week.
Yeah, and this we're talking about 1998,
right? Not
so probably will
yesterday.
Be, exactly. Now that will be like I don't work for that money on IT, but those times it was like,
that's good.
Wow, man, that's cool. So I decided I will go back to Mexico, and because I learned all IT by myself, just by playing, then I have no documents that show I can know anything. Right. And I didn't know in that time that in Australia that wouldn't have mattered. Right. They will have told me, sitting in the computer, you can do it, you're hired. But I have the Mexican mind still that is like, You don't have a certificate, you don't have a diploma, you cannot be hired, right?
Papers, please.
Exactly. Like, in a way, here is the same too, right?
Of course.
If you don't have a master's degree, you cannot do this, you cannot do
If
that.
you don't know where you were born or what your birthday is, we got to reestablish that, right? I mean, it's...
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was interesting. So I decided to go back to Mexico and get some papers. I meet a guy in there, and he told me, "Oh yeah, I'm an IT. Oh, if you're going to study in Mexico, go to the National University, UNAM. They actually have a really good football team too. So just go there and then have an area, you know, that is special for people that does not study, that is not studying in the uni. It's just for open public, and they're really good in programming."
Yeah.
Cool. So I go back and I subscribe precisely to the language they needed, that was Visual Basic. So I'm like, sure, man, I know about this. Let's just get some diplomas. And it was cool, man. My teacher was a super nice guy. And after 1 week, he asked me, like, what are you doing here?
You
like,
know this, yeah.
Yeah, like, well, learning. Like, but you already know. It's like, well, yeah, but it's week 1, right? I'm imagining by week 3, week 4, there will be new stuff. Or, I mean, this is level 1. By level 2 or 3, it will be different. It's like, no, it wouldn't. It's like, okay, do you wanna teach? I'm like, what? Really? Like, yeah, let me introduce you to my boss. Like,
Did you say
sure.
$257 a day, friend?
Exactly.
That's what I passed on.
I was like, sure. So I go down, meet the boss, and the boss, of course, is like, well, what are your credentials? Do you really know? You have to pass like 7 tests before we even consider you as a teacher. I'm like, man, I was upstairs studying, you know. I didn't come to apply. I talked to the guy, man. He's like, no, he has the right personality. Trust me. I'm like, listen to him, but I don't even need this job, you know. I come here because of the $250 in Australia and the opportunity to live in there with all the girls in bikini and life, right? So that's different. But then next week they call me, hey, we're coming from another branch of the university. Your teacher told us you can do this, and we need a teacher urgently. So I'm like, okay. So my teacher said, oh, no, your teacher said no problem. He can help you. So if you need to prepare, he will show you, and you know, so you can do it. So you know, I thought maybe. I talked to my dad. He was like, the next office is like, opportunities come to one in a lifetime, man. If the opportunity is knocking at the door, open, go. So I started. It was beautiful because in that time, bookstores in Mexico are very small or non-existent. So for me, getting books on IT, I need to get to people that were going to the States or to Europe, and they will come with these beautiful red books, rocks, and they will have everything. There was no internet, remember?
Yeah.
So at this time, it was like, wow, look at that book. And the library they have in there, man, it was everything. Yeah. So of course, the moment I get there, I start getting all the books on the language, read them on the first week, and that's it. I completed my first teaching programming class, which was really, really scary because, you know, I come to the class and it's like, oh yeah, I'm actually a teacher, but I teach computer programming, but I want to learn this language. Oh, we're engineers from a chemical company and we want to upgrade because we don't want to code this language. The next guy, I actually write books on IT. Do you know the books Learn Excel in 7 days? Yeah. Well, I want to write the one on Visual Basic. So that's what I'm here. I'm like, oh my God, what did I do, right? But it went well, you know, and as usual, because I learned by myself, just having access to the books was amazing. So for the next 7 years, I was teaching as a hobby. So that was pretty cool. And it allowed me, of course, to learn so much more, right? To get in touch with a lot of people. Just like here, it's great for business, right? Because instead of asking people, do you need a system? People know you exist. And if you are good at this, they will know, right? So it will be like, I know the guy. So by the time you come into a company, like, you know, I had really big customers in that time. You come like the guy that can fix it. You don't come like the guy who knows this guy, right? So it was really cool, man. And I really enjoyed teaching, actually. So it was quite interesting.
It's funny when you have this, you know, that person that you were, then you're the kid who has master's or PhD level expertise in something he taught himself effectively, right? You know, and the papers, okay, put him in, you know, and it's just, that's not how it goes, right? That's not how it's supposed to be. You know, we've all agreed in whatever mutual agreements we have that you need this paper and that paper, and then you can go do that. And here you are, and you're like in the room with the engineers teaching each other or teaching them, and it's like, just think of if you'd have decided to take that job as the wonder kid coder and Australia, you know, and in week 4, hey, we're going to give you some more money. You know,
exactly.
You're going to go in that room
man.
over there and like, you come out and tell us if you think anything good. It's just weird, right? Like, yeah, I mean, so you knew, and something allowed you to have the patience or the expertise or the diligence to learn something on your own, which is so remarkable when the kid goes in the room with the guitar and comes out jamming and you're like, how'd that happen? Oh, I just played along at the radio for 500 nights in a row. You know?
But you know, I think that's what matters. We give so much importance to formal education when there's so much value in someone getting in the room with the guitar.
Right.
If that's what you're good at, go for it, man. But you know, we're always so afraid and so in love with this formality and agreement in society that if you have the paper, you have a value, and if you don't have the paper, you don't. That we completely forget that that paper is just a social formality. It means nothing. I know a lot of people with PhDs that are completely useless. I don't understand how they went through what they went. I work with them, you know, in a lot of places. And it's like, how?
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I mean, that's the
I think, you know, we need to learn to follow our passions. Another thing, of course, is, and I think that you just mentioned, that is, just because you have a passion doesn't mean you don't have to put the work. You might have a passion and you might have a talent, but if you don't put what's required for you to achieve a certain level, well, you're a lost cause to yourself, right? And you have no excuse because you have a talent. You may be starting at 80% of what you need to get there, while some of the people that go through the whole education system, they might be starting at 0 with no talent. They will have the paper, but you only have to put the effort on that 20. It's something you love, should be easy, but we really need, I think, to give people this space. Sometimes we demotivate our own kids, like, no. Education first, go to the school, go to your extra class. Like, but I like guitar. It's okay, go for it, man. I think we need to leave more space for people to really do what they were born to do, if they were born to do anything.
Well, I'm wondering, you know, I wonder if the, you know, the ability to teach yourself a system also is the thing that wiped your memory. There
you go, man. That way.
You know, you were like connecting dots that the rest of us couldn't see. You're like, oh, I'm going to go learn Fortran tonight. That's what I think you meant by learning a language, right? So like, I'm going to go learn COBOL or whatever, just like, why? Well, there's the foundations of these other 4 things I got to learn next week because that's what I'm here for. Yeah, it's funny, right?
You know, at some point I also decided to stop trying to remember things. Like when I see how they examine people that want to be coders, I think, obviously, whoever designed the exam is an idiot that has never tried coding. It's like, can you write the line to connect to a database? I don't know that. Why do I want to know that? So, you know, I purposely decided to outsource my mind to Google like 15 years ago. Like, I will never try to remember anything because what I need is to understand the higher level, right? How languages work. What do I need to search for?
That's not necessarily true. I mean, you just gave me a
totally.
fairly beautiful summary of the origins of both you and your brother's name, right? I mean, there's spontaneous recall that's dynamic here that we're saying.
I mean, I'm not saying that I became a blank-minded idiot, right? That you still keep something. Right. But my point is, you should not try to keep things that do not have a real value to you. Right. That is my name, right? So obviously, I grew up with that. So.
You're not going to memorize the first 6 pages of the Bible just so you can say it out loud.
But you know, I might remember
like it.
But you know, I might remember this conversation forever for whatever reason. But I shouldn't try it. It makes sense. Like if this makes any sense to things that are worth for me that I need in my daily life, that's something. But I could focus more on the dynamics. Perhaps I don't remember the conversation, but I end up with friends. So that's that. You know, there's you never know what you're taking out of things. But forcing memorization, it's always bad.
Yeah, and it's funny because you said early on in this discussion, well, let's look that up. And I was like, that's a strange thing for him to say now because I think if we did it, we would look it up and then we'd read it and we'd sort of hash that out and then go from there with a better foundation. I never, you know, I'll look stuff up. I'm not sure when. It's usually must be sports facts. Like, you know, who led in scoring in '78? I'm going to forget that. It's probably Wes Unseld or something, but I don't know. You know, and it just sort of, I haven't grabbed on to that as a backstop, even though I too am now readily dismissing sort of the urgency of having these things around me that are the crutches for learning it. When I know they're there and they're probably here now, I can just go look. And it's sort of abandoning things that probably didn't suit me well back then anyways. You know, I think my doing well academically was a fine balance of sort of snow skiing between the trees. Like, yeah, I was going too fast for the environment. I just didn't hit them. You know, I somehow got through, but I look back with wonder at some of the things that I allegedly know that I just don't, you know, from my academics.
Same here, man.
Yeah.
You know, when I started university, I had this friend, and he was a lot older than all of us. And I was like, well, what happened? Oh, I already studied 3 years of this career in this university. I'm like, so why are you here? Well, because one day I wake up and I realized that I didn't remember most of the things. Like, I didn't remember, for example, the name of my teacher and blah, blah, blah. I was like, you remember the name of your teacher? It's like, okay, whatever, man. So anyway, 4 years later, like, we are still there, right? You have to go through the same group through the whole university. I'm like, man, you're an idiot. Why? I remember nothing, man, but I will never go back to study this. I don't remember because it was irrelevant. And the name of the teachers, what do I care? Who's these people, man? There's people that were hired. I'm not talking to the guy that is the top of the MIT teaching the class on artificial intelligence, right?
What was the guy's name who said you should be teaching and called and got you the job?
That guy was Fernando Servín.
Fernando, do you remember? So you remember it when it's relevant?
Yeah, like, exactly, right? Things have to have a weight to you. The point is, you should not try to remember things that don't.
Right.
And what I discovered in IT is that knowing the wording of a language was completely relevant. What I needed is to have a superstructure of understanding exactly how you break systems small apart, how you make functions into functional bits, and that's it. Because then you can do it in any language. You don't need any, you know, the learning of a language is just like, same thing. Okay, let's go.
And so do you like the manpower component to it or the structural? Do you like the IT decision-making to it, or do you like the people who are going to be touching the IT? What is the focus here? Because it sounds like it's the human side to it that is the important piece here.
You mean in the way of creating IT, or the way that I relate to IT, man?
Yeah, the both, I think. Like, because it sounds like you're a high-level systems guy now. Like, you're going to walk into Rum and Anton and say, well, here's what you need. Man. Yeah, like, why you got these wires? You know.
Yeah, well, I told you that probably the best decision was not studying IT, and probably because it gives me a holistic perspective of it. So,
but you still knew the coding, and you taught it after 2 weeks of class. So there's something going on up here that's abnormal. Makes you different than other people. I used
to be good at it, right? And because I was a fanatic, you know, just as some kids play 20,000 hours playing a video game, I spent 20,000 hours playing with anything I can put my hands on. Graphic programs, three-dimensional design, coding, anything that I could, because it was fascinating to me. So, you know, for me, it was, instead of playing Doom, well, I learned a language, right?
Yeah. So did your parents see this, and did they say, hey, son, you know, come out and play in the sun? Because they had you all mixed up in all sorts of stuff to keep you from going to jail or getting beat up on the streets, right? So one or the other. Did they see the change and say, like, hey, what's going on here?
I think they were okay with this. Yeah. You know, and because my mother preferred me not to go outside and
It was academic, right? Like, you were progressing. She could see it. You were learning.
It was, you know, it didn't have any impact actually on academics, because like you say, in that time, IT was completely separated from our lives. It was like, oh, you have a computer. Good. Yeah. Right. It didn't happen for many more years that this will have any impact. But yeah, I think they will see, like, to be honest, I don't know, man. You know, I just have a chat with my dad 2 weeks ago, and he told me, yeah, I remember when you used to work for me, you were playing all day with the computer doing nothing. It's like, what? I built every system your company used. I built you a CRM. I built you an ERP, an inventory system. You never did anything because everything was done with the systems I built for you. And I built them this in black screens with yellow characters, man. But, you know, I didn't even answer. I was like, all right. Yeah, well, I was playing. So if you tell me, how did my father see this? Probably he was like, well, he could be doing drugs. So perhaps for him, it was not like on the way of, oh, cool, the guy's having fun on the computer, to the way of, well, whatever.
Well, that's why I sort of asked that question. Do you remember the dish? Do you remember looking down at the plate? And so now you have this whole world that you're in where you, like, describe your work desk in your dad's office when you were building those systems for you. gum wrappers and food and Coke cans, Coca-Cola?
No, never. I never eat in front of my computer, man.
Okay, so you're
Both
a
are
purist.
sacred activities. yeah, both are sacred
60
activities.
pads
man.
of paper, yellow pads with pens and
I like boards. actually.
stickies, whiteboards.
Yeah.
And so were you the mad scientist? Was this the room of a madman? And people would walk in and say, don't go in there.
Actually, I never, when I'm coding a system for myself, I never take notes or make drawings. I do that when I work with teams, because you need to pass this understanding.
Here.
So probably if you talk about the job I had before this one, that will be like a mad scientist one.
Hanging stuff on the wall, like notes and stickies?
That's a
Or
really cool place, man, because, these guys are the largest educational publisher in Thailand. And I was working with one of them, and he covered every single wall in glass so we could write on them.
Nice.
And this is a place that my friend Eric, the UX guy, used to work with. So, when we finally, after a couple of months of going back and forth about what they wanted to build, I said, okay, let's build it. So I got a couple of developers, and I really prefer to teach people where we're going instead of just giving them a little piece like, you sit down and code this. If you don't understand where we're going, it's your problem. I know you can do this, but for me, it's petty, man. It's like, why don't you let this guy understand? Maybe he gets nothing, but at least maybe he does, right? And when he's coding, his life will be like, you know what you are contributing to. But anyway, on day one, I started drawing and making designs for what pretty much took us 5 years to build. 5 years later, we'll still go back to that diagram and say, like, you guys remember I told you we were going to build this? Yeah. Okay, now it's time for this part. And from there, our boards expand. So it was like, I don't know, man, it was floor to roof.
So you're talking
boards.
like a glass wall that you can actually use a magic marker on to write on it that erases a Sharpie or whatever, indelible or not indelible. Yeah, so
we had like walls and walls and walls with annotations. Like that wall stayed there for 6 years because it really, I described and what we were going to build in the big picture, but it was all the way to, it's going to work this way. And then we'll use other boards to expand. So that will be like mad scientist kind of stuff, man.
So does the iPad or does the handheld tech now, does that make that process easier for you because you...
When I design on the computer, I'm a little bit weird, man. I have my own manias in here, right?
Yeah, of course.
Even though I love visual things, I prefer to generate visual things from text because I'm also an absolute fan of versioning control, and all these kind of things that we do on IT. So I actually always do everything by typing. I was also very lucky that even though computers didn't exist, my parents both, at some point in their lives, they both benefit from doing mechanography. So typing, And they always told me one of the best decisions in my life was this. For my father, was a complete thing, right? It helped him to go from cleaning toilets to pay for his education when he was a kid. He's really the kind of guy that came from being a farmer to being super successful in life. So for him, it was huge. And they told me that was always huge for me, man. You should study. So I actually studied mechanography, typing. So I was amazed. I'm really, really
on
good
a
at
typewriter?
typing. Yeah, on a typewriter.
Helvetic or whatever the two spindles were on the typing machine. What were they back then?
All those things. But I have to carry my super 20 kilo typing machine to school, right? But then, I happened to be on computer, so I could type super fast. So in a way, when I'm doing diagrams, any kind of thing, that really, really helps. Otherwise, if I'm talking to people, my board is the best, man. No digital thing has a replacement for me yet.
That's funny. And so did you learn when you were typing in the one of two options that were given on, was it a manual typewriter or electric? Manual. And so you learned how to format letters and like what the proper way to send a letter out and how to do to whom it may concern.
Very little that. It was mostly like QWERTY, QWERTY,
but you were fast.
20,000 pages until you can do it blindly and at 300 words per minute or whatever it is the speed. I think it's like 100 something,
All right, interesting. And so on the road, countries of significance we haven't discussed. So I believe you said New Zealand and Australia. I believe you said Asia as a general rubric. And then you found your way back home to do stuff or to see mom or mom and dad and brother or however that worked. When did you, so you said here 16 years. So we're starting to meet in the middle, I think now. So, okay. So you got here and then you went to this great company with glass walls and you could write code on it.
Oh, that was a lot later. Yeah.
All right. And so now you're here and then all of this sort of tech in your head I don't need to write it down. I got it. Just ask me to who you want me to teach it to, and I may change the pedagogy, but we'll get through the teaching. Just who is it, them or is it them? Because they're different people. Yeah. When does the cultural, like, I want to share my carnita recipe, or I want to bring this, or are you approaching that like an IT issue, like, mezcal for sure, tequila, yes. Here's the constituent elements I have to have.
No, not at all, man. I only do that with systems.
Okay.
I live a very multifaceted brain life, I think, in that sense.
Okay.
If you talk to me about systems, then we go into it. And depending on the level, we change the way that we think about things. But when we're talking about other things of passion, like, I don't know, man, anything, especially food, right? That is like, it works at a completely different level. That was just a dream, and I always wanted to have a restaurant. Of course, there was a little bit of logical thinking, right? Like when you're in Thailand and say, what kind of restaurant? Well, then you don't have to be a genius to know that you should look back into your origins, right? It's like French is like, who are you, man? Right? Exactly. Have you been in France? Did you study cooking?
No.
Your best
croissant.
Your best time in life was in France? Like, no, I just think French is cool. It's like, well, then you're being just silly, right? So you have to keep a little bit of practicality. And it was, well, obviously Mexican is the only place that I have any sort of competitive advantage, even if it's not on the cooking, but at least I can say, this is what I want, right? So there was no much of analytical thinking in there. It was more like, I always wanted to do it. Also, I remember, I have a kid. So for many years, it was not an option. You are busy between, being a father and being an IT guy, right? But when my son started growing, my mom also lived here. My parents live in Thailand too.
Oh, nice.
So they were like, my mom was like, well, that dream of yours opening a restaurant, I think it's the right time, like your son is old enough. I could help you. So if you want to do it now, I think it's a good time. I was like, actually, you're right? So, I have a lot of good mentors and influential people in my life. So I started looking for a place and, just make it happen, man.
So were your mother and father born in Mexico City? I forget if we covered that.
My father is from Tlaxcala. My mother is from Mexico City.
Okay.
So,
Okay. And so there's commonality in approach to the food probably between the three of you, more or less. Maybe not preferences.
Not that much, man.
Really?
Actually, not that much. My father, I will say, my father being from Tlaxcala, he came from a small town. So there were a lot of influence that I didn't notice until now. Like, for example, there's a lot of food that I took for granted. For me, that's Mexican food. And then I just discovered that that's not Mexican food. Like Mexican food if you come from Tlaxcala.
Right.
I don't know. I mean, there's, for example...
Like milk?
No, we have food like chile atole. You have some kind of insects called acosiles that look like a very small prawn with super intense flavor. That actually... I thought, everyone knows this one.
Right.
And people is like, what? Yeah. Or, the super famous dish called mole.
Right.
Incredibly famous in Mexico. In every town in Mexico, there's a patron. And on the day of the patron, everyone cooks mole. So I will have to go to visit the family. I didn't want, you're a kid, and I was forced to eat 15 plates of mole in different houses because it's insulting not to do it.
Right.
And you are like, guys, this town will force me to eat 15 dishes. Please don't fill my dish. Yeah, sure.
Right.
So, it will be like a terrible experience. You enjoy the first one and you really suffer through the next 15. But then you believe that mole is how mole tastes, right?
Right.
And then you realize that in other places, it's not that good. But you grow up with this massive framework of how a mole is supposed to taste, right?
Yeah.
Even if they are neighbors doing it. And a lot of little things like that. That I will say, from my father being from a small town, that was a big influence. My mom is a fantastic cook. She hates cooking with all her heart, but she has a beautiful, seasoning. Like whatever she touches is delicious. So of course that has a huge influence.
Why does she hate
cooking?
Yeah. Just enough?
Man.
Enough?
She hates it.
Always?
Always.
Day one, like, here, honey, eat this burrito. I hated making it for you, but it's lovely because it has my special Mamma Mia sauce or whatever it's called.
Yeah, exactly. And like, she never learned how to cook. She just started cooking because she got married. I was like, okay, we need food. I'll cook it. Like one of those things. But did she enjoy the process of cooking? Not at all. She's also not a big eater. She's more like a fussy eater. Like, no need for this, no need for that. So in a way, that was actually a handicap because my mother doesn't eat any entrails and stuff like this.
Yeah.
And, in Mexico, that's huge.
Yeah.
But I grew up without eating that. So it's very, very hard to go from I only eat, lean beef to I want to eat the intestine and the stomach cooking the nice soup. I think everyone in Thailand or in Mexico will understand that. People that actually enjoy that, right? They will swear by it. They will never take a ribeye. Why would I be eating that, man, when I can eat the pork feet? It's a two different universe. So, so that will be hair.
Yeah.
And for me, it will just be, I just like eating.
Yeah. Yeah, but you got to settle on a menu that, I guess, sells as well. You can't have something that you buy and end up throwing out every Monday because no one ordered it for a month.
Yeah, you have to make a lot of decisions. And I remember when I first met my chef, Tomas, a fantastic guy, man, super talented, Mexican, of course.
This is the current one?
Yeah, that is the current one.
Tomas?
For a little bit more of time. He has decided to change, to switch, so he's moving away.
Okay.
But anyway, Tomas has been he has been our chef for 7 years.
Nice.
And the guy's super talented and humble. And I remember my brother saying, I should record this because I want to remember. Because we're talking and he's like, so what kind of dishes do you want to sell? He's a real chef, right? He's not another Mexican that learned how to cook. He's a proper chef. And I'm like, well, let's start making a list. So of course you have to have pastor. But, and this is the part that my brother found interesting because he's he's a fast eater. He enjoys food, but he's repetitive. He's not very adventurous. We are complete opposites in the terms of food. But, we'll start but wait, it has to be like the pastor in this place. It has to be like this, it has to be like that. So for every dish, we will go very much in detail about no. I don't want the steak tacos. I want gauneras. What are gauneras? Well, gauneras are from a very specific place in Mexico called Las Gauneras. And this is a guy that loved bullfighting. And one day he invited Gaona, which was a bullfighter, to eat. Well, they invite him to play cards. And the guy was like, I'll bring the meat, don't worry. So because he loved this guy, he just want to show off his tacos, right? So, little things like this.
Right.
So
and the Galmeras were not from the Yucatan.
No, that's from...
There you go. So there's the early fiction is now exposed.
Yeah, I told you.
the Galmerian taco, which is some bullfighter's favorite thing.
Yeah, it's there, right?
The irony of a bullfighter loving a particular beef taco is a beautiful thing, right?
Yeah, it's not real irony, right? You can love the animal in all its ways,
right? Here's how you do it, fellas.
Yeah. So this guy that was cooking for the bullfighter, brought the finest beef he could find, cut it in a very special way, warm it up with the tortilla so they will absorb all the juices from the meat. So this is a conversation I'm having with my chef, right? With Tomas, and it's it has to be this way. Oh, what about this one? Well, that one. And of course, he's giving me some feedback that things I never knew about restaurants, right? No, you cannot have a single dish with beef. You need at least 2 outlets, like you said. You cannot just throw away the food, right? So if this super adventurous meal doesn't sell, you should have another meal where you can use the same ingredients. And the more dishes you have that share the same ingredients, the more you can keep everything fresh and running. So I learned a lot in there, right? But yeah, pretty much every single dish that we have is inspired in a market, a location, a state, or Cochinita, that's a dish from Yucatan.
Yeah.
And Cochinita there was this restaurant in Mexico City. Now Cochinita is everywhere. But when I was a kid, there was only 1 or 2 restaurants in the whole of Mexico City that sell them. And this place was called El Maquesh Púrpura. So we will go there, and they have a lot of food. But this was so amazing, man. I never got to try anything else. I will be 5 of this, and I will try the other dish. But once you started, it was addictive. Yeah. So I will be until I couldn't eat more and say, okay, next time I try something else. I could never. Then I went to Yucatan, similar to you, and I will stop in the markets. I will stop in many places, and I will be like, okay, how many there are? 8 selling cochinita plus other things. So I will go and say cochinita 1. So I will order from every single place, try them all, and to be honest, this Maquesh Púrpura will be better than any one of those, even they were made in Mérida, Yucatan, right? That is where they come. Obviously, the guys in Mexico City were from the same region. But, it will have to be like that. Yeah. So what about the tortilla? Fried. No problem. Some people don't like the tortilla to be fried. But no, you cannot make the panuchos without frying, right? It makes sense. It has to taste like Maquesh Púrpuras. Otherwise, you are not getting there. So a lot of these little things, they
So
were
are
in
these
those
little
first
things
conversations.
on the glass window and magic marker?
They're written on the menu now.
Was your chef sitting with you like, watching you sort of go through your thing? Like,
No, he was actively participating with me. Like he was like, "Hey, what about this? Oh, I prefer I like this." So it was really much like he's really really talented, man. He's really good, and he also, like I told you, he doesn't come from my city, so there will be some things that need clarification. He comes from San Luis Potosí, right at the center of Mexico.
yeah,
So he will have some dishes he calls different. He will have an appreciation for different things. That I think that's completely normal, right? So yeah, these long conversations about the flavor profile of each dish will be very important. At the beginning, like I told you, he's super humble about a part of being talented. So he will be like, okay, alambre, cook me an alambre, because we don't even call like that in my country. In the countryside where I come from, we don't have that name. It might be something else. And I want to taste your flavor. So I will cook it. He will watch me and say, we have something similar. As a good chef, he will be like, let me cook you my version. And I will see how, as a pro, he will cheat everywhere and get it so much more delicious, right? Like maybe he will cook the onion a little bit more. Maybe he will apply the salt at a different time. Maybe,
interesting.
Little things until we say, from my dish, I like that the bacon is more crispy, but from yours, I like everything else. So let's keep yours like his, right?
You have like 6 Alhambra entries on your menu, right?
Yeah, we have a few.
I thought that was the name of a city. I'm an idiot, so I don't know what I'm talking about. What does it mean?
Alambre?
Yeah.
That alambre actually means wire. Why we call it like this, it's a mystery for the times, man. But that's an alambre.
I'm glad I didn't know. I didn't want to order the wire beef.
Yeah. Exactly. He told me like alambre, for us, I think it's more like what they sell in the restaurant down here, right? That they give you the meat,
on a skewer. Right. Yeah, right.
Exactly.
So beef on a stick. Yeah.
Exactly.
Like,
It will be more like a massive skewer in some other place. But in Mexico City, that's an alambre, man.
That was a style.
And you can get a lot of kinds of alambre. So that's why we have a lot of those, right? Like,
boy, is that like saying kebab, right?
Probably.
I mean,
kebab will be a little bit more particular, but yeah, it's very.
Yeah. Okay. God, I never thought of that. Okay. Well, that shows you how much I understand. All right, I'm with you. So you have the workshop and it's collaborative. You want to go whiteboard. He's going to talk about the texture of onion, and you got to sort of meet in the middle by doing it and watching and then coming up. Well, cool. So alcohol seems to play a part in this. I'm not saying it has to be had, but mezcal. I do recall trying to get to the shop and going down the wrong street, and the street got so narrow that my car didn't fit through, so I had to go back out and come around. And then I remember the mezcal flowed so freely in various forms at that dinner that I sort of lost track of what was happening.
Well, that happens with Mexican food.
Is the alcohol a huge part of the triangle or square or?
It absolutely is, man. And I had a lot of mentors to thank for that. I was never a big drinker. Even when I go party in Mexico, I will be alcohol free. I will just drink wine. I never really enjoy beer. So the first time that after we opened, one girl come, a Mexican, she's like, "Can I have a margarita?" And I'm like, "Damn, I've never tried a margarita in my life. It's shameful, man, but I never tried a margarita in my life. I tried tequila, of course. I tried mezcal, but have a margarita." So we're struggling that first time to do it, man. So that was...
How could you not?
Exactly.
That's
that was
like
crazy,
McDonald's without fries, right? Like, bro, what are you doing?
Exactly. Right.
Or is that a prop to you? Like, I don't want to do margaritas, baby. You're forcing me into this.
To be honest, that was a blind spot.
Interesting.
It is more like... Yeah, a total blind spot, man. I never understood it. And as much as I appreciate food and all that goes behind, food has always marveled me, right? So I will see two people cooking with the same ingredients. Like I see these from my past history, man. Like there's this Hungarian girl and this Thai girl, both living in Mexico with my brother and myself. And they buy the same ingredients. I see them get in the cart. And then one of them make a tom yum kung and the other one make a goulash. And I'm like, man, how did this happen? This could be two universes apart, but I saw you buying the ingredients, and my mother will cook something else. But alcohol never got that for me. At the very beginning, one guy walks in, Russian guy, Ivan. he works for a super good company here, man, that sells really quality liquor. And he's like, most probably he was lying to me, but he said like everyone is talking.
He means exaggerating.
Yeah, the guy told me like everyone is talking about you, so I wanted to visit you by myself.
Oh,
like,
he was inflating your importance. Okay,
yeah, so of course,
What you mean he's lying about his alcohol he was selling you?
No, the alcohol was alright, man. But like,
sorry, Ivan.
In this case, I'm thinking like, of course, I don't believe that part. I still appreciate it.
Yeah.
But it's okay, right? Like, flattering is great, but doesn't really work like you're expecting. Anyway, I was like, okay, let's forget the flattering. Talk to me.
Yeah.
What's up? Like, you have to have quality liquor.
Yeah.
I was like, do I? At that point, it was pathetic. I have a bottle of Cuervo, man. Now I feel ashamed of that Cuervo.
We love Cuervo, but still, he's demonstrating you didn't put a lot of thought into diversity.
Exactly, because actually, I wouldn't dare to sell you Cuervo now. I wouldn't serve you Cuervo.
There you go.
I have this thing, probably this little anecdote will help you define how I see things, right? Like, we're buying a cake for a birthday party for my son.
A keg of beer.
No, sorry, a cake.
A cake. Oh, I'm
so
sorry.
This is a birthday party for my son.
Yeah.
He's like 9 years old, and we're inviting the friends, right? And my wife is Japanese. My son is half, obviously. So my wife said, let's just buy that cake. And I'm like, why are you buying that cake? Why don't you buy this other cake that actually we eat all the time, right? I think this cake was like at Paul, or the other one was just like a cheap cake. She's like, well, it's just a party. I'm like, it's not just a party. It's our friends. Why are you serving people things that you wouldn't eat? Why don't you share with them your favorite cake? I mean, they're your friends. You're inviting them. So why you don't do this, right? So this is very much how I think about food and drinks, right? So when this Russian guy, Ivan, is talking to me, he's like, do you sell vodka? Like, no. If you sell vodka, you have to sell this one.
Right.
Beluga Noble is what we drink. Like, well, sure. And he started educating me, and this was fascinating. And it really opened my eyes and took me out of that blind spot. So I'm very grateful for that, man. And he started explaining me how vodka is all about the water. And this one comes from 150 meters deep wells in Siberia. And then we move into Mezcal and Tequila and all these things, right? So he's like, what tequila are you using? And I'm like, I don't even want to say anymore, man. So he introduced me to this tequila called Tequila Ocho, which since then has been our house tequila, which comparison to Cuervo, man, is like you use Cuervo to clean the toilet and you use Tequila Ocho to drink. And, from that level. So, of course, very quickly you open your eyes to these. Then we were invited by the embassy, for example, Mexican embassy, for a Mezcal presentation. So we get to try like 20 Mezcales. They explain us a lot about it. And I used to start learning all there is behind, as much passion as there is in chefs around the world. Well, the people making alcohol, they are really, really crazy about it. I suppose it's like people making guitars. A lot of people can make a guitar. But then the guy in Spain making guitars for Paco de Lucia and those kind of guys, they're a different level of game, right? And it's the same with liquor. So, when I start learning all this, how amazing tequila, mezcal is, how much you can play with it, the flavor profiles you can get, the passion they put into making a rum, then it really hits me exactly the same. Why would I serve you something that I wouldn't drink? And maybe because I'm old, I prefer to drink a good glass than a full bottle of something that will kill me tomorrow. Like, again, that comes with age, right? You said like, well, I could get this full bottle of cheap whiskey, or I could drink this nice whiskey. Maybe I cannot afford a bottle of this, but I can afford a glass, and I better prefer to drink the glass. So then we completely switched the idea around any kind of alcohol and drinks that we sell, and we went for proper stuff. So if I wouldn't drink it, we don't sell it. So, our tequilas, our whiskeys, our mezcales, everything now is very, very thought of. And we only sell like stuff that I'm really proud. For me, that's it, right? I want to be proud. If I tell you should try this mezcal, it's not because I'm making a profit or because it's cheap. It's because there's something behind this mezcal, and I want to share this with you.
Do you think that translates into customer satisfaction and loyalty?
Absolutely. I think you lose half and you win half.
Right.
There's, of course, people that say, but margaritas in other places are 300 bad. You are robbing from us. It's like, go buy a bottle of Tequila Ocho.
Or Cuervo's the best. I can't believe you use this 800 stuff. Right. And then you're just at a dead end. You're like, oh, oops.
But like I said, but you have both, right? I remember these very cool guys that were like a table of like 15 farangs, all cool party goers.
Right. Right.
And they were ordering like jars of margarita and pisco and very good stuff, right? But they're ordering top stuff. And when the bill comes, they say, everything was fantastic, but we are never coming again. How can you charge this? Like, guys, the prices are listed, right? It's not like where
Right.
this didn't come as a, oh my goodness, where this come from? Second, do you understand that every 2 margarita jars use a full bottle of tequila? And if you go to buy this tequila, it's like 2,000 baht.
You had 10 pictures of it too,
Exactly.
some fellas.
And tomorrow you will wake up with no headache because you're drinking top liquor.
It's no.
And you
dirt.
even notice, right? Because you are telling me everything was amazing.
Yeah.
So what happened? And they told me, whatever, we're not coming back. I was like, it's cool, man.
Yeah.
On the other hand, we have people that come and tell me,
Yeah.
hey, I'm asking about my margarita. I only drink top of the shelf. It's like, well, okay, that's new for me. I'm not like this, right?
Yeah.
But it's like, well, I respect that. So it's what tequila shall I put to the margarita? And, you know, it makes me incredibly proud to say, just order the regular one because we don't use anything that will not fit your quality standards, right?
Yeah.
Would I go for something higher? No. If you want to drink a straight tequila or straight mezcal, I will recommend you something else. But for mixing, we're putting it not because it's the cheapest, but because it's the one that mixes the best. And people try, and of course they say, okay, this is a proper margarita, and this is someone that will at least think next time they come, yeah, this is a place where I can get my drinks, right? So yeah, I think everything you do, you know, people notice everything. Sometimes we have to change the tequila because it's not available. People notice. You know, we change from Ocho Blanco to Ocho Reposado, and people will tell me, today the tequila is different. Today margarita is different. It's like, how you notice, man? But they do, you know, and people do. I mean, we all appreciate everything, man. It's like we might believe we don't, but yeah, people notice everything, man.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're the last, you know, to replay that last 3 minutes from you would be a great conclusion, but also a great summary. I think you get on the road, you're away, you establish your things, you marry a Japanese woman, whatever. You have changes in things, but you're landing on this sort of core of your dishes, Yucatanian or not, whatever, and you have these things, and people will come in and say, yeah, I know where to get Mexican in Bangkok. There's 5 places, and this one, you know, bam, bam, bam. And you're like, all right. And so now that's the stop, right? And it's just, and now you've defined your geography, you know, and it's people go to that. And people make a trip for that. And people leave time to travel if it's at rush hour on Friday night to get there with extra time. And it's just, it's so interesting to see, to talk to especially the coder, but to talk to the guy who developed it and put, you know, a lot of thought into it. And, you know, as someone who's never thought of owning a restaurant or would even think that would be a wise investment.
Yeah, I'm not sure it's a wise investment. Either.
No, but putting it together, I mean, you know what you like, which is great. But if you like garbage, that's going to reflect, you know, which there's some things that some of my favorite dishes have a lot of ketchup on them. So I'm not sure how sophisticated.
That's what I was going to, man. You know, just because you put together something that you're proud of doesn't mean it's going to work.
Yeah.
I'm sure, you know, that I respect everything that the other Mexican restaurants are doing. You know, I think something that makes always a big problem in these conversations is when people tell, oh, I love X place. We say, that's not Mexican. Right. And it sounds like we're just diminishing what they do. No, it's really not Mexican.
Right,
you know, the big mistake
Composite,
here is that we take like food from too many places, a lot of which are not even in Mexico. We call them Mexican because they're inspired or derived. So when we say it's not Mexican, well, yeah, we just mean geographically it's not ours, right? Yeah. Or it has a strong preference for different ingredients. But I'm sure they do a lot better than us. I'm sure there's a massive market of people that is missing the food that they used to get when they were kids in the States. And I know in the States now you get a lot more real Mexican food. Yeah. So the next generation is going to grow up with that, right? Yeah. So I suppose there's choices and things that matches very different people, very different markets. I know there's people that today want Tex-Mex, tomorrow want California, and the next day want authentic. And that's cool. You know, that's the diversity of food. And I will say that the diversity of food, drinks, experiences, traditions is what makes this world worth living. Yeah. You know, so we're putting a little part. I'm not saying that what we do is better than what anyone else is doing, but it's a version, it's an option. And I suppose every option enriches what you can live and do in Thailand. So in that way, yeah, I'm happy and I'm proud that it worked and that some people at least enjoy our proposal. And that's it, man. There was a lot of luck involved in there, but I'm very happy that it turned out well.
Well, it's cool to see if you go online and look up. So, I mean, just to be clear, the Missing Burro, MISSINGBURRO, 2 different words, has a website, has menu on there. But there's also some good reviews online, so you can check those out. They progressively get, well, they don't progressively do anything, but I did notice as I went through them, there were some good foodie style ones, and there were some good, other style ones. But like I said, the Bangkok Eats TV, I thought, oh, this woman does a very good job of showing this food. Not like on the top of the mountain, or some silliness, but like, I was like, oh yeah, that's how I remember that dish looking when I got it there. And that one tasted awesome. And I didn't order this one she has here, and that looks different, but I thought you've done yourself well by how it's presented. And it's really interesting as I look at that around there. Cause like I said, I search out Mexican. I don't know what I get. I will remain faithful to the places I find, usually if I like it. So I may be eating a variation of Mexican that is sort of left the planet.
But if it fits your taste, it's okay, right? There's it's like people that love heavy metal and believe everything else is wrong. It's like, bro, you're missing half of the world, right?
Heavy metal lover right over there.
Which is cool, as long as you have appreciation for all the things. It doesn't mean it's not your favorite, but that doesn't mean everyone else is wrong, right? It's the same with food.
That's what I say. It's our band, when you ask what our music is like, is a combination of Whitney Houston and the Scorpions.
Whitney Houston. I probably will say with the Scorpions.
We meet halfway. Well, good. So I think I told you when you came over, we do this in 3 parts. The interview, I'm sensitive of your time I appreciate you letting me talk so long. But I really enjoyed the discussion so far, and I think I got a good feel for you. I didn't get this when we met in the bar or at the location because you're busy with a handful of people. How about if we pack up here and head over that way?
Sure.
And then maybe you can show us the place, and if we're lucky and the kitchen's open and the chef is there, we could see a couple of dishes. But I would just say Bangkok Eats TV has a great Missing Burro 20-minute summary, and I thought I'm not even going to compete with that, so I was excited about that. Are there any other things you'd like to plug or attach to Missing Burro that we should be aware of, or do you do events, or do you cater, or do you send the truck out? And if so, should they go to their website to contact you? Is that sort of how you do it?
Well, for now we only have a branch. We also do deliveries, and I will say for me currently, we would like to open more, so we're looking into that one. And I think for me now is, everything changes, everything evolves. So for me, I can see Mexican food evolving, from the days that we only have the one here in this location. Then it started with Sunrise, and it was La Monita. They did a great job. So there's a lot of iterations, right?
Right.
And of course, this changes the way that the palate of Thai people, they evolve very fast. And for me now is like, sure, we already get here. Where do we go next, right? Some people is trying like fine dining. Some people is trying to refine it. Some people is making different versions. So for me, I'm looking at the future. Mexican food is. We have like 20 dishes probably, and probably in the whole of Bangkok, there's like 35 dishes served of Mexican, maybe even less. Maybe it's just really like 25 because, people get on the favorites too often, right? You cannot open a Thai place without a Tom Yum Kung. But the next question is,
what else?
Like we were talking, just Yucatan, it's a universe of food. And if you talk Oaxaca, probably Oaxaca will have more food than France, man. I don't know. Oaxaca the richness of that place is massive. Then you have 20,000 kilometers of coast, and there's nothing on those, right? People are like, where are my fish tacos? It's like, you really think out of 20,000 kilometers of coast with different cultures, tradition, cold, hot water, all we came to is a tempura taco? It will make very little sense, right? So I will say I'm excited about what's coming, man, and I'm trying to bring more stuff. Will it work or not? I honestly don't know, man. Like the whole burro was a product of luck. you know, when I make an IT decision, I know what I'm doing. But when I make a restaurant decision, I was acting blindly. It worked. I'm happy. And what will work in the future, we'll see. At least we'll be talking to the people in the tables to know what they like. You know, I love talking to people. So we'll see, man. But yeah, it's exciting. And you know, every time I'm at Burro, I'm still super happy both playing and talking with my staff as I am talking to customers. It's a hobby and I love it. So yeah, man, I'm really excited that I get to do this and continue to.
Yeah, well, you know, from my point of view, I didn't really know anything about you. And the perception at the table and outside, and there was music playing that night, happened to be our mutual friend, was of a cool, loving host. You know, I was like, all right, you know, I don't know if this guy owns the block or if, you know, this is the last straw or anything in between, but I thought, very cool place, very cool dude. You know, I'm learning to go slow on my beverages here as well because, you know, it was hearty and the food was fun. So thanks for coming in. You know, let's pack up.
Thanks for the invitation.
Yeah, head over to the shop. Great.
Awesome.
Itzco Calva. So when I say B, is that how the Spanish would say Calva?
Calva? Yeah, in Mexico we don't make the difference between the V and the B.
Right.
The Spanish will do Calva, but we just sound the same, Calva.
So I apologize for trying to go Spaniard on you. So we are now at the Missing Burro, and we've got a menu in our hands, and it's quiet. We didn't want to bother the staff. I wanted to get you before you rev up for the night. It's Friday night in Bangkok, still daylight. But we're going to order in a little bit, but I wanted to get here to talk. You know, just some fundamental misunderstandings were shown today, Alhambra. I mean, here it is. So this is Alambre, and so you have an A apostrophe here.
That's pronunciation, right?
Right. A specialty from Mexico City, grilled meats mixed with chopped bacon, bell peppers. So that was the wire, right? Yeah. Okay, I didn't know that.
It sounded like more like a skewer. Yeah.
Right. So this was really interesting when I came here last time to eat. The carnitas, I think, I thought was what I was talking about when I spoke to you. So with this tortilla, would you have some type of sauce on it, or would you coat it first?
In Mexico, we normally, a lot of street foods, when you're eating them, they just pass them quickly through the fat. So carnitas is one of those. You know, carnitas is pork cooked in lard for a very long time. So then you have a little bit of this, you just touch the lard or the oil and then warm up the tortillas.
Pork cooked in lard.
Yeah. Which
So
has
in
a
a
very
pan?
special reason. No, we actually, in here we make it like in big thick pots. In Mexico you use a cooper pot that is massive because you will cook several pigs in there.
Oh, right, of course.
Yeah, but you know, it's different. Like in Mexico, a carnitas restaurant will sell only carnitas. Like there's no...
Oh, that's what you're saying about carnitas stalls.
Yeah, or cochinita. Or,
Right.
There's a lot of these dishes that are, the restaurant that sell only one thing.
Carnitas.
So these guys will use a massive pot and then they will start adding the different bits of the pork at different times, right? So for example, lean meat will cook faster, fatty cuts will cook at different speeds, so they will adjust this one and keep it at the right temperature. And it's great, man. You know, I wonder for a very long time why we use lard for this. It's about the transfer in temperature. You know, when you boil something at super fast speed, it makes the meat very, very dry.
Right.
So actually lard is the one that transfer temperature the lowest. So it keeps the meat the moisture.
Nice.
And it doesn't make it fatty. Actually, the pork loses fat to the lard. So you get a very, really nice thing. It's like a French confit at the end, you know, with it starts to get a little bit fried on the outside, juicy on the inside. So yeah, carnitas is a work of beauty, man.
Yeah, so would you say that this piece of meat and this carnita as demonstrated there wouldn't taste dry though, it would taste succulent, right?
Yes, exactly.
Right. That's what I loved about it. And I liked the slipperiness. I liked the feel and the taste of that. So it says, and I quote here, a dish from the state
there you go.
of Michoacan.
Michoacan, yeah.
Okay, so not Yucatan.
Yeah, there you go. Right. But we have from many cities. Actually, you see we put the origin at the very bottom.
Okay,
so it's a little bit hard to read.
Michoacan. Okay, right. Type, main dish, servings. Okay, so yeah, got it.
That part normally no one sees, but yeah, this is very famous from Michoacan.
Right, and so I've told people, go get the carnitas. It's a Yucatan specialty. So wrong, and wrong.
Yeah.
Good.
The Yucatan specialty will be later on the menu, man. We'll get there.
All right, so what else would I be confusing this with? Because I remember getting several different orders. I thought of this when we came here and sat outside with Stefan and the guys and had a whopping amount of food delivered.
As it should be.
Yeah. Was there just this type of carnita? Because I thought we had variations, or was there a taco or a pastor type?
Yeah, carnitas
sequence?
will only be this one.
Right.
Because we have like we were talking, right? We have a lot of regions, we have a lot of preparations. So most probably you will have gotten carnitas. We try to present things differently. In Mexico, you have the luxury of presenting everything the same because people know what they are eating, right? But we also need to make a visual differentiation for that reason, so people remember this is different. And then when they taste it, they will realize it's totally different flavors. People think tacos are chicken, pork, or beef.
Right.
And a lot of brands trying to sell cheap tacos in here are doing that, which is like, it's a complete misunderstanding of food, right?
So I'm on the Tacos al Pastor page.
Yep.
A recent creation of Lebanese origin, generally or here?
No,
okay.
Generally.
Okay. Once Mexicans fixed this dish by marinating meat, so it just sort of speaks generally of central Mexico here at the bottom.
Yep. So
So is al pastor one meat, or is it the way?
It's always pork.
Okay.
But the meat actually is not what it is about. It's about the marinade.
Right.
So what these guys came with was like the kebab kind of thing, right? So the way that you grill the meat is very important. But they prepare completely different. We marinate with pineapple, spices, chilies, so you get a completely different flavor profile. So pretty much the only thing that we kept was the grilling style.
Okay.
Anything else is not Lebanese at all.
All right, I'm looking around to see it here, but the kitchen's over there. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm trying to narrow in then.
Probably you got cochinita that
Yes,
day.
there it is.
That is a Yucatan dish.
Okay,
There
so
you go.
so I was partially correct to all my friends who I've told to
Yeah,
come here.
you were.
A house favorite from the state of Yucatan.
Yeah.
Cochinita pibil?
Yep.
Pibil.
The actual dish is called Cochinita pibil.
Pibil. What is pibil?
I think it relates to the preparation style with this
okay.
achiote spice, because you have pollo al pibil, cochinita pibil. You have a lot of dishes in the region that has the pibil, and it's also the achiote kind of mixing marinade.
Okay, so that's the achiote. That's the next big word to learn. A regional spice. So
Yeah.
it's marinated pork and achiote, a regional spice, sour orange juice, and Mexican chilies, then wrapped in banana leaf.
And cooking
Banana leaf, same here, huh? You buy local banana leaf.
Absolutely, man. We
All
have
the
a lot
roads.
of similarities.
Slow roasted for over 5 hours. Nice. Okay, so that was, and they come out several to an order.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it
Normally
says here 5,
small
right.
tacos or 3 of the big ones.
Yeah, and for some reason I think we're each doubling down, so we were eating a lot of them.
Yeah, that will make sense.
Right. Nice. So those were the big ones. I know when I looked at the various reviews you got, the ones we just mentioned seem to be referenced by most, but not by all. But there were maybe over 5 reviews, 20 different dishes mentioned. And it was funny how, depending on who came, the favorites changed.
Absolutely.
Do you find that with your customers, that there are different enclaves of appreciation?
Absolutely. That's actually a big challenge, because people want to sit and the first time they say, what is the dish that we cannot miss?
Right.
Or what is the best seller? Or what is the most popular?
Right.
And my answer is always like, well, where do you come from?
Yeah.
And what kind of food you like? Originally, for example, Thai people didn't used to eat a lot of beef. Now they do.
Yeah.
But 5 years, 7 years ago, people would be like, but no beef because we're Thai. So, of course, the best seller is not going to be a beef dish, not because it's not amazing, but because people didn't eat it. Now they're eating it. Lamb is another thing, right? Barbacoa, it's amazing.
Yeah, you have the tacos barbacoa, right?
Yeah, we have a special now, quesadilla de barbacoa. You should try that.
Oh, nice.
So that's amazing. But a lot of people think lamb, it's always like a little bit smelly, pink on the middle. They have only go to fancy restaurants that they get the rack. And the first time they get one that is just a little bit smelly, which is normal in lamb, then I don't like this meat. And that's it. It erases lamb from the menu. But Mexican style is very different. It's never smelly.
Huh.
It's marinated with 4 kind of chilies, braised for 7 hours. Of course, you get something very different, but it's still nice and rich and delicious. So that's another one that should be a bestseller in a different country.
Right.
It is, but like people that eat that one, they come back only for that one sometimes. When you get Americans coming, they always have the instinct to order the enchiladas and the beef.
Right.
So, and they are great enchiladas.
Yeah.
Enchiladas is not Tex-Mex at all. It's a pre-Hispanic dish. Even before the Spaniards came to Mexico, we were already eating enchiladas. It's like a salsa, tortilla, some kind of protein or vegetables inside. Of course, we were eating that before, right? So it's really, really good. Japanese people, they seem to always prefer choriqueso.
Oh, that's funny.
So it's our homemade chorizo, melting cheese, but for some reason it really suits their palate. Like you can give them a lot of things. There will be always like choriqueso, the gauneras beef, and the pastor, for example.
What do you serve it on top of? Do you serve it on top of a tortilla or a chip?
Which one, choriqueso?
Yeah.
Choriqueso is one of the few dishes that come with flour tortilla.
Okay.
In Mexico we do a lot more corn tortilla, but choriqueso, for some reason, is on flour.
Yeah.
And probably that helps, right? You have the very tasty chorizo, you have the cheese, and it's very accessible with the pico de gallo, the sour cream. It's comforting, it feels like a warm meal at home. So probably that's part of what they like. But yeah, it really changes by.
That sounds researched as well and studied. Like
really?
like the best educated guess.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go back to the barbacoa, which we're calling the lamb, I think here is northern, northern Mexico.
Well,
I would
the
think
one that we make is northern Mexico.
The recipe,
The original
style.
The original barbacoa that most Mexicans eat is from Hidalgo. And Hidalgo is very, very close to Mexico City too.
Right.
And it's made with a hole in the ground, a pit in the ground, you cook it, and it's absolutely gorgeous. But here's the part that I'm honest with you, and I tell you, I love the soup. But I was never a real fan of the meat. I always found the meat was not as good. Like I will eat it because the broth was amazing, so having a taco on the side was an excuse. I never appreciated meat. Then I went to eat, traveling, you go to eat like a lot of these Middle Eastern foods. And they have the precise same thing. But the meat is better because I actually cook it for 30 hours on the pit.
30 hours.
Not here.
Yeah, I'm just checking to see if there's even mention of that.
I tried the meat from this Middle Eastern
6
restaurant.
hours,
Yeah, it's a different one.
Yeah.
So I tried the meat and I was like, okay, this is better. Sadly, they didn't have the soup, the tortillas, and the salsa, right?
Yeah.
And then our chef made this version, and this is not the same barbacoa. This is northern style, and it keeps most of the flavor in the meat. So you don't need the soup. The meat by itself is amazing.
Yeah.
So comparing both, I prefer this one. I will say this is a better barbacoa than pretty much any I try in Mexico. And well, then my chef told me, in the north we cook it a little bit different. It's not so much about the broth, it's much more about the meat. So that is the reason we keep this version. I think it's really, really good, man.
Yeah. Boy, you just rang a bell for me with the Mexico City broth in the morning for like a breakfast broth.
That's barbacoa.
That's it, right?
That's it, man.
Son of a gun. It's like, and it's maybe medicinal in nature, and that it helps a hangover.
It's the best thing for the hangover. Exactly.
Right, barbacoa. Son of a gun. The broth. Right.
Yeah. And
almost legendary.
It is legendary.
Yeah.
God, when we travel, we actually leave our houses really early because some of the best barbacoa, you can only eat that in markets and by the highway.
Early
so
morning.
When you're traveling, like going to anywhere, 6, 7 in the morning, you have these places, it's freezing and you get this delicious broth and the tacos. That's why we started to travel like, okay, let's leave at 4 so we can eat barbacoa on the way and then keep going.
Do you drink it? Like
the broth?
Yeah.
Normally goes on the side.
Oh, so you'd eat, you wouldn't be like an American and drive and eat, you'd pull over and eat your broth.
Yeah, we will stay there, take our good time in eating, man, and then continue our
Here I thought like the driving, with this big straw.
Nah, I'll be honest, I will drink that one. If you tell me here's your takeaway in a glass, I'll take it, man.
So just guessing, any of the shrimp dishes here are big sellers for the Thais.
Exactly. Because, for example, the shrimp dishes, we have a couple. The shrimp dish is quite spicy.
Oh, is it?
Yeah,
That's
this
funny.
one is quite spicy. This one is actually not so Mexican. This is more house creation from our chef.
Yeah.
And yeah, there are some people that don't eat spicy.
Yeah.
So, but Thais will be especially looking for that. So this will be a big seller for them, of course.
Okay, and I believe I was advised the chicharron. So this one says popular dish, origin. You have a chicharron. Did we go eat one at the Philippine place? Yeah, so we ate right down the street here.
Yeah.
With MK Tutoy, who sings in the neighborhood. She's a great young singer. And she's from the Philippines, so we went to eat at the Philippine restaurant. Lola's Kitchen. Yeah, right around the corner. They have a chicharron.
Yeah, of course.
It's famous in Philippines, Chicharron, Barbacoa.
Right.
It's kind of
Barbacoa is very different though. The Mexican barbacoa is separate from the other.
Yeah.
But chicharron, I mean, the final result is different, but of course chicharron is a pork skin fried, right?
Skin, yeah. Right.
So we have a lot of variations of this in Mexico. You also get it in Chiang Mai, right? You have just like the pork greens, like really only the skin without the meaty part. And they also make a green sauce that is super similar to Mexico. I think a lot of this is influenced from other countries.
Yeah.
But at the end, we Mexicans do either the skin or we sometimes cook it also with the meat. So this chicharron, we actually decide to make it with pork belly. So that's some stuff that people will do. Yeah, and the main difference is once you have these tender melt in your mouth with a little bit crusty on the side, then we cook it and then we put it with green sauce. The green sauce will actually soften the pork. So it's like, this is not crunchy like Philippines or like Chiang Mai, because then we cook it again, right? But the green tomatillo sauce, and suppose you remember tomatillos?
Sure.
So a lot of people don't know what they are. It looks like a tomato, but it's completely different profile flavors, actually different species. It's tangy, sourish, and super tasty. So you have the richness, the fattiness of the pork melting in your mouth, and then you have the tomatillo giving it this little edge.
Yeah.
The beans just round the flavor, man, and well, a tortilla is always work.
Nice. So I'm going to skip over the obvious, not that anything's obvious. Those are the ones I wanted to come and talk about, and I will order when the staff gets rolling here. But from my time in Houston, and I just had some last night. Tres leches as a dessert.
Pastel de tres leches.
Yeah, seemed to be one of the more surprising favorites of mine over time.
Yeah.
When it's done the way I like it. When it's done the way I don't like it at all. I like it very wet and very, you can't discern between leche 1 and leche 3 if there are 3 leches. It's just sort of a wet piece of dessert, which is not my generally preferred version.
I do agree. Like I was telling you, I remember food. I remember one tres leches that was the best thing ever.
Yeah.
But I never got it that quality ever again, man.
It's sort of the lost, it's like the fountain of youth out there, right? Yeah. So now I mentioned earlier, this is what I see online, this page. And it has, look, here's the summary. So it has the Alhambras all together. That's where I saw that. So I wasn't smart or anything. I wanted to look up what the mezcals were. I forgot to do that. Or if there was just one, and I remember it showing up in a tumbler here, right? I thought mezcal was like a shooting or a shot style drinkable thing.
Actually, mezcal and tequila, most people used to shot them. But nowadays you sip them.
Yeah.
Like if you're drinking Cuervo or one of the ones that they sell everywhere around here with the little hat hanging, you should not only shot it, you should pretend to shot it and throw it behind your shoulder, man.
We're on the record
you should
there.
Not drink that. But proper tequila or a proper mezcal is like an aged whiskey. Actually, we recommend mezcal for the people that like whiskey. People that like whiskey like something that is complex. You have all the aging, you have the wood flavors, you have a lot of things. In a mezcal, you have even more things going. A new mezcal is like a 12 years old whiskey. And then you have barreling, so you have a lot of combinations. The presence of the plant is huge in mezcal. The process is huge. It's also a pit on the ground, and then you make a fire for like 30 hours, so the sugars will start converting. So depending on the land that it grows, the kind of agave that you're using, the land around the pit, whatever you're using on top of it, you get these super smoky, complex flavors. So the last thing that you want is just to let it pass quickly. You want to enjoy that. You want to really appreciate all the flavors. And we have a lot of really good mezcales here, man.
So the plant for both tequila and mezcal is agave?
Yes.
Okay.
But there's a lot of varieties of agave.
Right, of course.
And tequila only uses blue Weber agave.
Right.
You cannot make a tequila with a different one. So in that way, we
green
can say-
agave, for example, or
Yeah, you cannot
brown
use
or
anything.
yellow, or what are the other
well,
ones?
we call them by species.
Okay.
So that
Okay.
will be a blue Weber. That is just like the not scientific name, but that's a
Yeah.
denomination. For the other ones, you will have stuff like Tobala. Most of them will made with espadín. But there's around 30, 40 different varieties of agave that you can use. Some of them are only wild. So there's very limited amount of agave. And you have to wait at least 7 years before you can use the plants.
Wow.
So for example, for tequila, this brand I told you, Ocho, they introduced the concept of terroir.
I wanted to look that up. So is Ocho listed here?
It is, and it's on the tequila side. It's behind here.
Oh, there you go. You got it on a special
So,
page. Oh, okay.
you know what
God,
this
this
is
is what
the-
I didn't see. I was like,
Yeah.
I thought you only had one. I was like, wow, you're
No.
hanging your hat on just the one. Okay, so
No,
here we
not
go.
at all.
So
We have-
there's the tequila and mezcal page,
And we have a lot more now because it changes a lot, right? Sometimes mezcal is stop coming to Thailand. Sometimes 5 arrive, and we
Yeah,
just
yeah,
get
yeah.
whatever we can get, right? But we get a lot of really good stuff overall now.
So can I read some of these here? So
Absolutely.
Ocho Blanco.
Do you want to see the bottles? Or
Maybe
I don't know if
when
you
I'm
guys
eating,
can
we
put
can
them
pull
in.
them out just to look,
Yeah.
or maybe Frank can shoot behind the
Yeah,
bar. But
maybe later we
so
go there.
is this
We have
all
around
the
10
same
different.
company? Ocho Blanco,
No.
Campania, Ocho Reposado, Himador. No, these are different brands, right?
Yeah, they're
Patron.
completely different ones. And right now we have very little. We only
Excelio.
have, for example, Patron, we only have it because people know about it.
Right.
So when people order Patron, what I listen is, I want to drink some quality tequila. And my answer is, if you want Patron, we have it. But if
Yeah.
you want quality tequila,
Do that.
then let me show you something
Yeah,
else.
Ocho. So I was able to buy Patron at duty free here, but Stefan told me to get the Ocho. He gave me a bottle. I didn't actually buy it, so I don't know where he got that from.
Ocho, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And so then as I jump down to Mezcal, I see there's
Mezcal,
a
we have
Lade
so many more, man.
Los Danzates collection, which has 5. Is that the same brand, or is that not?
Los Danzantes is really interesting, man. Los Danzantes is a restaurant. It's from a restaurant in Oaxaca, and they were one of the first ones that started making mezcal into the drink that it is now. One of the first things that they did is
Like a million years ago, or in
no, like
1985?
a few years ago,
Okay.
man, probably like 20 years ago.
Okay.
So what these guys did is first they discovered that mezcal with a worm inside cannot be taken serious. Like if you're gonna go to Vietnam and find the liquor with the snake inside,
Yeah.
it's gonna be very hard to convince you that this is like a good whiskey. You will forever think this is a gimmicky drink, right? This is just alcohol or
Yeah,
whatever.
yeah.
So they remove the worm and then they focus on quality. So they have all this collection. Then they also start a social project. So they thought, okay, let's support the people that is here with us in Oaxaca. And they created Alipus. So Alipus is a social project where they go try your mezcal, and if they like it, just like we were talking about things with music, right?
Yeah.
Imagine how hard is it for you are making your mezcals in your little town in Oaxaca because you like mezcal, to having that mezcal here in
Right,
Bangkok,
right.
bottled with all the permits.
Right.
So what these guys do is, if they like what you do, they will take care of everything. So they will.
So help me. I'm sorry to interrupt, but
Yeah.
I've let this go by a couple times, pretending like I know what I'm talking about. Oaxaca is where in relation to places you've identified for us already? So Mexico City, if you're looking at Mexico on a map, it's a
Southern.
long country. Mexico City is centralish,
Centrally,
central
a little bit
north.
south.
Yeah. So okay, and so Oaxaca is below that.
Yeah.
Coastal or not coastal?
Coastal.
Okay.
So you will have Huatulco, Cepolite, there's great surfing there.
And it's a
So
state, Oaxaca.
It is a state.
Okay. Okay. And so
And the culture in there is extremely and ridiculously rich, both for food, for traditions, and for drinks.
And do they have many different languages within that area that are local, like
They
we
have
talked
a
about?
few, yeah.
Okay, so has all of the above. So legit place.
like, it's
all right.
extremely rich. Like if you will take Oaxaca by itself, you will get a country of such cultural richness to match anyone else, right? You will get something probably like a Peru, right?
Yeah,
That
yeah,
is
yeah.
still like incredibly rich with amazing food and traditions. So Oaxaca will be on that scale of uniqueness.
And so if I look at the ones outside of the collection, the
Yeah.
Alipus, the Cebusco, and the Santa Pedrena, different
Completely.
and different makers?
Yes.
Okay.
Even if you look at Alipus, we have 3 kinds of Alipus right now, because I told it's a social project, right?
Right.
So the blue tag, it's an
Okay,
Mezcalero.
that's what I
The
missed.
black one, it's
So the
another one.
Alipus is here, and that
Yeah.
company is going out to your aunt, and she says she has a nice smoky mezcal, can you bottle 100 bottles because that's all I can make, and they might do that project.
So they will do that. So they will put your
Uh-huh.
name, the name of your farm. They will give it a color, and they will make it part of whatever you can buy anywhere.
A color, give it a color.
The tag. So to identify between the different alipusas, there's the blue one, the purple one, the black one, the whatever. So for example, my favorite is the blue one. So that bad memory I told you. So for me, it's like, the blue. Of course, it has the name of the maker, the name of the farm, but the color always help, right?
So do you think you remember your childhood better by color-related events? Like the big rainy day, the big snowy day, the big...
Nah, man.
No,
It's either something super good, super bad, or food related.
Okay.
But it's coming
food
back,
related. Okay, so
food
there you
related
go.
is the key,
So
right?
you can attach a color to your favorite food because you got
man,
competing.
Probably I can do that.
Okay. All right, so we got on this page. I wanted to see it. I'm not an expert, although I did go through the service of the mezcal, and this is the recollection I had of a heftier serving glass than its neighbor up north here. Was I drinking with tonic or with water in it, do you think? Or was I drinking it straight?
We do 3 kinds of drinks in here. Of course, we have a margarita with mezcal.
Right.
We have one drink called Excentrico, which it respects a lot more the mezcal. So it gives you the cocktail experience,
So mezcal Excentrico. Okay,
Yeah.
good. Help me. So the first one was the margarita with mezcal? So
Yeah.
ours... Oh, there you go. Yeah. Okay, great.
And the other one is Excentrico.
Margarita mezcal, so that it's
Margarita.
not pricey or anything. So
Yeah, no.
mezcal
And
Excentrico
it's
is
just amazing mezcal, man. Like
okay, good.
Alipus or one of that at that level, which is like a really, really good handcrafted product, that will be the house mezcal. We'll never go you will never get anything cheaper, even if it's in a cocktail or in a mix. You will always get like a super top quality mezcal.
Nice.
And because the Excentrico really respects the cocktail, the alcohol. Well, not the alcohol, the mezcal.
Yeah.
You will really get the personality. Like it will not be these guys like, oh well, this tastes generic now. No, you will still be able to taste very well the mezcal. And of course, if you go for any of this collection, you have to take it straight, man. You never mix this thing.
Yeah, I didn't think so, but I don't remember having that. That must be a close-up of a smaller glass.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, this is more like traditional with the jicar on the side. We normally drink mezcal with orange, not with lime.
Right. Okay.
And you're actually not supposed to even use mezcal.
Right. Well,
We
good.
serve it in a pisco drink. Actually, we use a different glass. 2 things, For one thing, it let people appreciate that. Wait, I should not shoot this one, right?
Right.
Some people order like this unbelievable 7 years aged tequila before that is like a cognac or a whiskey.
Right.
And it's like, what did you do, man? It's like, please not. So serving it in a different kind of glass allow people to take the time, appreciate, smell it, sip it. So that's also why we serve it in a different glass.
Got it. With the 40-pound glass, they're going to do it real slow.
Yeah, something they will. Sometimes we're multisensorial beings, right? So sometimes remembering, seeing things, something that looks appealing, smells appealing, it increases the experience, right?
I'm with you. I don't disagree. And so help me understand the rum and then that horchata thing that you told me about that night that I forgot about. Horchata, as I understood it, was a drink, frozen or cold, that had a nut in it. Was it nutty? Horchata or no? Or milky?
Horchata with rum.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fantastic drink, man. So horchata is a traditional Mexican drink. It actually came to us from Spain, and it actually comes from the Middle East. So it came from the Moorish time in Spain. It was introduced by the Moors, but they used to make it with a nut in there. And of course, when the Spaniards came to Mexico, the nut was not in there.
Right.
So we start making it with rice. And it actually comes really, really close to the original. We honestly don't care about the original. We like our horchata as we were born to know it.
Okay.
So it's mostly made with rice, with milk, and cinnamon. It's really nice. And then one day we tried with rum. Like I told someone, just said like, can I have this with rum? It's like, that sounds good, man. So we start trying different rums until we find the rums that, really make more out of it. Sometimes the rum wins, sometimes the horchata wins. So we find like some dark rums that go really, really beautifully with it.
Yeah, which brings me to the next question is if you just map it by geography, the rums weigh pretty heavily here, right?
Yeah, they are.
Are they Mexican?
No. Actually, this is really something funny. In Mexico, you will find most people drinking rum. Not tequila, not mezcal. it is changing. Mezcal is as famous
Most
in
people
Mexico
who?
now.
Most Mexicans?
Yeah, like if, I remember all my childhood, if you say like, let's open a bottle, it will be a bottle of rum.
Of what? Like just rum, like a
We will
Bacardi?
drink Cuba Libre. Yeah,
Cuba
like,
Libre, okay.
if you tell me you were drinking Bacardi, yeah, most people will just get a bottle of Bacardi. Or you will go for a Torres, you will get like a brandy.
Yeah.
But you will continue to do your Cuba Libre or your half-half, you know. That will really be what when I grew up, that's what people were drinking. Tequila will be like, we're celebrating, or you know, this is more like party, get a tequila.
Yeah. I don't recognize any of these brands, so I wouldn't know.
Yeah, these ones, you know, when we came here, of course, we didn't find a lot of Mexican rums. And I mean, if we were drinking Bacardi, that's not Mexican in any way, right? So we did have stuff, but you know, you go fancy, you will drink a Torres 10 years or Torres 20. That's also Spanish brandy. So I wouldn't say that Mexican brandy has a lot, or Mexican rum has a lot. When we were here, I told you we were learning. Plantation, for example, is our house pour. Plantation is actually French, plantation.
Right.
And the guy is really cool. He came here. He was the liquor maker of the year 2017 worldwide. And it's a guy that he has his chateau in France, and he decided he wanted to sell barrels. He wanted to finance his next batch of whatever. So he flew to the Caribbean to start selling his barrels. And as he talked to people, they had no money, but they have great rum. So the guy thought, okay, let's swap. I give you barrels, you give me your rum. So he started going to many islands and finding the rums he really liked. And they will have different sources, right? Some will be using the sugarcane strain, some will be processing from something else. So he will start making collaborations and then sending the finished rum to his chateau in France to age them longer. And he has all these high quality barrels, so he will be making amazing rums. So you have rums that rum from Jamaica, rum from Barbados, rum from blah, blah, blah. So each rum is super different. He has, of course, his white, which is like a combination of many things. They have won like 14 golden stars from multiple competitions. It's super good stuff, man. So we have a lot of the plantations. Here are the Barbada, Guyana, Panama, really good. Then we try the one in the mini picture, man. This is Diplomatico. Amazing stuff, man. This is stuff from Venezuela. So you get this one, you drink the Reserva Exclusiva straight, and that's it, man. This is amazing. Then we got others from them. The Mantuano is better for mixing. We also have the Blanco, Planas. But, you know, after Corona, things are very shaky on the market.
Right.
So some things are coming, some things are not anymore. Diplomatico stopped coming, is gonna come again. So, but rum, we don't sell a lot of rum here. Most of the rum we sell is because people order mojitos or a few people order Cuba Libre. But in Mexico, we drink a lot of rum.
Yeah, it's funny. I don't have a big rum history, so I'm not used to looking for it even.
Yeah. Well, it's also an interesting drink. Not as interesting as tequila or mezcal.
Yeah, for sure.
You know, this is made of sugar. The other one is made from a legendary processing plant, right? Like 7 years to grow. Ocho is actually called Ocho for that reason. They only use plants that have been growing for at least 8 years. So that is the Ocho.
So is there a agave epicenter in Mexico? And do we know where it is, or is it like under trade secret?
In reality, it's everywhere, but tequila can only be made in a special region, right? So you only can grow it in the tequila region. So despite having more agave everywhere else, that will be the tequila area. Anything else cannot be called tequila, even if you use the same agave.
Okay. And what region is that? It's the area of tequila?
Jalisco.
Of course.
It's an area, right? So you have the altos and the bajos, which is depending on how high in the mountain it is. And like I was telling you, because the plant takes 8 years in growing, and it grows, even though it's a limited area, it's a huge area. So same as wine changes every year, and same as if you get a wine that is close to mountains where spices occur naturally changes. And you know, what this guy said is like, look, wine changes every year. And if you move from one side of the mountain to the other, depending on how the wind blows, the grapes will acquire the characteristics of the nature. Of course, agave does the same, which is the reason that Ocho introduces the terroir, and every bottle comes marked with where these plants come from, and they only use from one land. So even though you have the same flavor profile from the same process, you have a very different experience if it comes from the lowlands the highlands, from one farm or the other. Like I said, maybe this was just isolated within the agave, or maybe it's close to the mountain where it gets flavors from whatever else, right? So that's why tequila is very, very interesting, man.
And that's cool. That's a good thing.
Sorry, to finish the answer, so that will be tequila. Now mezcal is grown in different regions, and that can be anywhere in the Republic. So Oaxaca is one of the huge centers for mezcal, but there's also mezcales from San Luis Potosí, Guerrero, pretty much anywhere. But yeah, Oaxaca will, if you are calling epicenters, Oaxaca is perhaps the most famous one for mezcal.
So is mezcal bordering or veering toward the more common?
No.
Even though it's more growable?
It is more growable, but the thing with tequila is huge. So the standards to be able to make a tequila, again, like we were talking with music, even if you're making the best tequila ever,
I get what you're
you
saying.
will never get that nom. You know, the nom is a certificate that you're making tequila. You have to go through so many standards, industrialized production. So at the end, very few people can do it.
Good point.
The second thing is tequila is steamed. Because you steam the plant, you get a very clean flavor profile. Well, mezcal, it's burnt underground. So that gives you a layer of complexity that is unachievable for tequila.
Burned underground, and so and you're going to do it close by because you can't be burning it in state X and you transport it to state Y to do the next step.
So you have a lot of little things in there. So if you try 2 tequilas, it's a universe apart in flavor. Like it's unbelievable how different they can be.
That's funny. Well, that's good. So did I miss anything on the menu that you want to highlight or talk about? I mean, I picked up the stuff
that's cool, man. We have a lot of really cool, interesting stuff. Like, I mean, we could go over every plate and I could explain you the quality, but I think that's all right. You know, we use, like I told you, if we wouldn't eat it, like we use Thai avocados. It's great that they are improving, but they're not there yet. So we only use avocados from Mexico, Peru, Australia, proper Haas. Meat in Thailand is improving a lot, but we haven't found beef that is as good as Argentinian beef.
Right.
So we always use Argentinian beef.
Nice.
If there's no that, then we use Australian. We have some dishes like this gringa de boda that just doesn't exist anywhere. If you don't eat it here, you will never eat it in your life. This comes from the place our chef come from, Tomas, our original chef, man. So if you're not from San Luis Potosí, you never try this even if you're a Mexican.
Aguascalientes.
Yeah.
That's where he's from.
He's from
San Luis Potosí.
Okay. So
Okay.
Aguascalientes is right at the center of Mexico, and they do this for weddings and special celebrations. So someone was born, they make the dish.
It looks like a pizza sort of
That's
baked to the...
Yeah, so the presentation is not legit.
Okay.
What is legit is the dish is like a mole, but the mole in there, they make it with pork, and they are closer to an adobo, that he will know adobo, because the chilies has more presence. A mole is more balanced with the chocolate and stuff. This is more like an adobo with pork. If you don't come from that region in Mexico, you don't know this dish. So we have it. And then one day I was especially hungry, and we saw people don't know how to eat it. People don't know how to eat mole.
Right.
It's one of those things like eating, like eating sticky rice with your hands here in Thailand.
Right.
You really have to get into it, right? Otherwise, you still see people with fork and knife trying to eat the sticky rice and like, at least use the spoon, man. But no, use your hands. So one day, I just wanted to try it in a quesadilla with flour.
Nice.
And it came out amazing. So it solved 2 problems. The flavor was unbelievable, and we didn't have that challenge that people didn't know how to grab a little bit of pork, a little bit of sauce, a little bit of rice,
and go
spoon
for
it
it
out with the tortilla and eat it. So this one fixed the issue, and that will make the reason that even in there they will not cook like this, and anyone else will not know how to cook it.
Now you got me. Gringa de boda. Now I'm hungry. So,
It's good, man.
Rum and Anton podcast does 3 things. Interview, visit to a place in Bangkok, here, Thonglor, Soy 7, Soy 7, Sukhumvit 55, so you can figure that out. And then the performance, which is we're going to order the food from the chef and eat it, and then we'll film that. You wanted to do one add-on. What is
One more thing, man.
Yes.
Now, in the time that you saw those interviews, we were not making our own tortillas. Now we do. So during the Corona time, I actually bring a tortilla machine from Mexico and the grinder. That
Over
uses,
there?
Yep.
Okay.
So we do the whole thing. Like we don't grow the corn yet, but we would like to. But we do everything. The nixtamalization process, that is an ancestral process, is the reason that Mexicans were able to survive on corn.
What's it called?
Nixtamal.
Nixtamalization, did you say?
Nixtamalization.
Nixtamalization. There's an X in it, right? So we're back.
Yeah.
Nixtamalization.
Or nixtamalization, I don't know.
Huh, awesome. Yeah, I get the point.
So, you know, if you just eat corn, you cannot survive. People
Yeah,
were
yeah.
able to survive with different wheats and corns in different
Right.
places, but corn was never enough. So the way that they discover is they took this cacao mix, they took some alkaline substance, mix it in the water and boil the corn.
Yeah.
And this releases the nutrients and changes the cover of each grain of corn in the way that it becomes glutinous. So you don't need gluten in
Yeah,
order
yeah.
to make tortillas, but in order to get that, not like a polenta, but like something else, that we do that whole process. We bring, you know, this machine that is just as Puebla volcanic stones to grind it, and then we have the machine. So now we make our own tortillas. So
I don't want to
super
lose your
important, man.
business.
It's all right.
No,
We're
I'm gonna
done
come
here.
in, if they're coming.
Can do. Yeah, can. We're done.
All right. This was awesome.
Pleasure.
I had a lot of fun talking.
Me too.
And I'm going to look forward to eating.
Yeah,
All
let's
right?
do it.
Thank you, guys.
How are you guys?
All right,
Welcome.
Franco,
Go
we're
ahead,
done.
please. We're moving out.
Beautiful.
1, 2, 3, quiet.
What is the numbering you talked, or the, what did you call it? Was this the colors?
It's very special reasons. The blanco means young, joven. That means it was just made and distilled, but it has not been aged.
Ah, okay.
So
So,
this will
this
be-
is white right here, you mean?
Yes.
Okay, I see.
Oh no, this is Los Ansantes. The coloring I made is Alipus, which is back there. I'll show you that
okay.
in a
Oh,
second.
right, okay.
So different ones. So this one, for example, is Espadín Blanco. It's been distilled carefully. It's a beautiful drink. That's it.
Oh, I see, okay.
This one, for example, is a lot. Even though it's a Blanco, this one is made with a semi-wild agave called Tovala.
Semi-wild agave. Huh.
So that means they
funny.
can only make one time a year. And because they can only help growing it in the wild, it doesn't grow naturally. It grows naturally, so they can just come and try to help it, you know, like do something.
isn't it?
It is.
It's
man.
got that old cork in it.
I like it, like Mexican beer does like that, right? So this one they only make like 830 bottles a year. So all this is like number bottles. So Tovala is very special because you have the same thing but just change a little bit, right? Then you have the one in barrel. After 1 year it's a reposado. After 1 to 3 years it's a añejo. And
I
then
see, I see.
you have these two, man. These ones are super special too.
Is that the
So-
black cheer? No.
These are super cool, man. No, black tears is wrong.
Okay.
So what happened in there, man, is when you put it in a barrel, you get a lot of complexity from the barrel, right? Like they use whiskey or cognac barrels, depending. So that gives a lot of new taste. It gives a lot of resins from the wood. It refines the product. But some people say, if you already have something that's special, that's smoky, as complex as a whiskey, why do you merge it with something like whiskey?
Interesting.
So, for example, for this one, they wanted to get the refinement of the aging, but they didn't want to get the effects of the barreling. So this is aged in glass. This is a steel proof, aged in glass. And they only make it once for the 20th anniversary of the brand. This is also number bottle, so you can
Look
see.
at that. On the back. That's cool.
So of course, you know, not everyone takes the patience to do that.
Right.
This one is even weirder, man. Also,
It looks heavier on the bottom. What is?
this one, of course, also numbered. This is super weird, man. When this one is fermenting, they put dry nuts and dried fruits, and nuts, so it changes the profile of the flavor. At the end, they tint it with a you know the insect called conceal, the one that is used to make the red pigment.
I do.
Okay, so they tinted with that. It naturally grows on the agave, so it already eats agave all its life, and it's an organic thing. And it's
They
called
use it for
pechuga.
coloring.
Yeah, it's actually used for coloring. Wow. All the Middle Ages, when you see all the royals wearing red, it was from the Americas. They discovered in Mexico they were wearing all these beautiful red clothes. So they found it was a concealed insect.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
I mean, that's
Also,
a
the
funny
purple,
fact, right?
someone left that one in a bottle, in a bucket of metal, and it reacted and became purple. And that's where the royal purple in Europe became from, also from the same insect.